The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on
This is
Sunday.
about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Oh, guns up. Giddy up. Welcome to Failure to Stop Night Shift. Man, do we have a show for you tonight. I am here always with the wonderful, the amazing Andrea. Was it Andrea Uplate?
Yeah.
Andrea Uplate on the old Instagrams. Look, we got a follow-up, our first follow-up case. You've been doing true crime with us for like 5 weeks now, and we had a PI reach out to us about the Dylan Rounds case, which is a case we did last week. If you haven't followed up on that, you should go back and watch that case update or case breakdown, I guess you would say, from Andrea. But first, today's show is brought to you by Rip Pack, which I thought when I saw you today, I said, do you know what? Your teeth are a lot whiter.
And I said, because I tried Rip Pack.
Because you've been Rip Packing it up.
Finally.
Been Rip Packing it up. Saw a little video you did on your Instagrammies. It's cute. She started her own little Instagram, folks. It's a 40-something-year-old woman trying to figure out Instagram. It's hilarious. She calls me for
40-something.
I guess that's why she calls me. She might call me for other reasons, but my wife's like, why is that Andrea calling you again? I'm like, oh, she's wanting Instagram updates. She's like, I'm just kidding. My wife and Andrea have been best friends for like 12 years. No, this show is crazy. It's brought to you by Rip Pack. Also, we've been talking with GhostBed again. GhostBed, the owner of GhostBed called us this week. Really excited about that, man. So all of you have been asking, and asking you shall receive, it looks like. That's the exciting news there. So here we go. Let me give you a little backstory real quick. You want to give us a backstory real fast on what happened here? I'll just give it to you, and then I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you got all the questions. But we did the show, and then we got a call from Jim Terry, who is the private investigator who was hired and then subsequently fired for the Dylan Rounds case that we brought to you guys last week. And he reached out to me in the middle of the night in the late evenings. And he said he wanted to get some things off his chest. He wanted to come on our show to do it. And I said, we're going to have a very adult conversation about the whole thing. I'm going to give him a chance to kind of clear up some of the accusations, the misconceptions. There's been a lot said. And I've always said on this show, the longer things go by, the longer time we wait, the more we learn. And so these cases are always evolving. There's always something new to come out. And so I had a lot of questions for him. He's got a lot of speculations. He's got a lot of theories, but he's got a lot of knowledge and insight as well. And I think if we can just kind of work our way through this, right? If we kind of dissect it slowly and we give him an opportunity to dissect it slowly, that some of the things that he's saying, you might see as a probable theory, or maybe you can write it off as not a theory. But it would be fair to give him that opportunity. And so we're happy to have him. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. I'll let him introduce himself. Yeah. So welcome to the stream, Mr. Jim Terry.
How are y'all? How you doing?
Doing good, sir.
Yeah,
how are you?
How are you?
I'm hanging in there, guys. I'm maintaining in this land of haters. And first of all, I am extremely tickled to be on a format like this. I'm still learning this YouTube universe. But it seems like there's two sides and two different types of camps when it comes to true crime and YouTube. There's people with backgrounds and history and involvement in this. And then there's a bunch of frustrated housewives that put on a ton of makeup, read through Wikipedia, and take money from people that ask questions in a chat room. So I'm glad to be on the first version of that.
Well, what's really funny on this show is you have both of those. You have a guy
I mean,
that really
were you
knows what
talking
he's
about me?
doing.
Is that was that for me, Jim?
You have one guy that really knows what he's talking about, and then you got the lonely housewife over here who no, I'm just kidding, Andrea. I'm just kidding with you. Listen, this is a wild case, man, and as a law enforcement officer, Jim, it's a tragic case, man. I've met with many families who have lost their kids. At the end of the day, there has to be some kind of empathy. There's got to be empathy, whether we like what this kid was involved in. At the end of the day, somebody has gone missing. Somebody has done something nefarious, and some family members have had a bad go at parenting, whether they deserved it or they didn't deserve it. At the end of the day, nobody's winning here. Am I right?
I would suggest that there could be a lot of losers in a case like this. That's 100% correct, but we've not found a body. You know, there's people of interest here, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
And I don't mean you, but just in general, let's be very honest. And police have a tough time with this because a 19-year-old, a 29-year-old, or a 79-year-old decides to do something else with their life or disappear. And I've worked these cases before. Does not mean it's a crime. A missing person is not a crime, correct?
Yeah, I like how you brought that up because I've said this from the beginning. When the mother was talking on the news website, the cops really weren't doing anything. You know, the first thing I said, and I said it on our show last week, was from a police perspective, which is what Andrea asked me. I said, if I go to a missing person that's 19 years old and he lives 5.5 hours from the family in a trailer in the middle of nowhere, my first assumption is this guy wants to get away from everybody. And what deems this as being criminal, because it seems like he doesn't want to be found. So I'm not shocked that the cops didn't get involved very early in this case.
Well, and then the first thing the family did, or the people that were in charge, which is one of the reasons I was brought in, and I'm just going to shoot you straight. I'm not for everybody. Anybody who's followed my career, which has now been over 5 years, closer to 6, knows I'm a straight shooter. I'm not in this to make friends. I have a very unique practice as a private investigator based out of Biloxi, Mississippi, a state that has the wild west of licensures. And I did complete my schooling in Florida and then took my information and my background that I had in the CC license, which is the intern license, and just opened up the business in Mississippi. It would be the same thing as if I went to medical school in the United States and then didn't want to do all the residency and became a dentist in the Philippines. You could still be a dentist in the Philippines and help people and do what you do without all the constraints or the red tape of the state of Florida, which is what I did in Mississippi. And people don't understand that. But a missing persons case, and let me be very clear about this, my friend, because one of the reasons I wanted to do this is there is a lot of these shows that have former cops, former detectives, NYPD this, LA County that, detective, law enforcement, military guy this, and they won't touch me. They won't touch me with a 10-foot pole. So the fact that you're letting me do this on the program means the world to me because I'm going to learn something here today.
Well, we're going to learn something too. I think my first question, and you're kind of hinting on that. My first question is, why don't you tell me? Listen, I was a police officer. I have been called to several PI calls where, you know, maybe it was a peeping Tom or a stalker, and then find out he's got credentials. He's a PI.
Right.
I've had many cops leave the industry for PI, but I don't know myself exactly what a PI is. Can you just briefly, because I know we want to get into the heart of this, briefly tell me what really a PI is and what makes them different than law enforcement, and what made you want to be a PI rather than be law enforcement?
Well, I had a long history and still have a long history in the indoor and arena football leagues. The Arena Football League itself folded many years ago, but many of the teams that were in that league or that I played with or against have now moved over to the indoor and arena football world. That's where 22 years of my career has been spent. That's my real job. In the last few years of my career, a lot of guys I played ball with were guerrillas. They were bounty hunters, skip tracers, and they said, we think you'd be good at this. I don't look like it on this, but I'm almost 6'3 and a half, 225, 230 pounds, which is big for a kicker. So I don't look like a little small place kicker. They said, you don't have any felonies. You could carry a firearm. A lot of guys that I played ball with that were bounty hunters in the offseason couldn't. They said, we think you'd be good at this. You have an ability to talk to people. My background in college, having played college football at an HBCU, where I was the only white student at Clark Atlanta University. I never had a white teammate, never had a white teacher. My minor was Black History, and you could get that amongst any of the 4 colleges that were on the campus, which averaged about 17,000. The fact that I was a minority as a white guy at an HBCU made me and gave me the ability to speak with anybody. I've never been in a hood that I felt uncomfortable in. I've never been in a white neighborhood.
That's actually a pretty interesting thing, because there is a technique to that, and it took me many years of working in the inner cities where I had to learn and adapt. And I know that, Andrea, you actually worked on a case where you had to take she chose some Green Berets, that she took some Green Berets with her. So you kind of know that there is a technique of being, I guess we'd say, Caucasian, right?
Or just read the room, right?
Yeah.
Read the room and adjust. And then I get it. I mean, I think you're talking the sports world, I don't think it's very far-fetched that you're going to have people from different backgrounds and whatever all together. But yeah, just in general. And I think, and especially as law enforcement as well. And then I think that you can probably move forward and transcend that into PI work, right? Because you're talking to everyone. You're having to talk to everyone of every different background.
And having been able to that, you can read people, like you said, read the room pretty well. Some of these guys said it. I looked into private investigating. I took the classes in the state of Florida. Actually took the classes with my mom at Hillsborough Community College. It was several weeks of classes. People seem to think you do this over a weekend or several weekends. Maybe that's an option. It wasn't for me, but they didn't tell you when you took the courses that at the end, you had to understudy somebody for 2 years. I was making too much money still playing in the National Arena League or the National Indoor Football League or the Indoor Football Leagues. So what I did is I went ahead and I just heard that a buddy of mine was a cop in Mississippi. He said, Jim, you could open up immediately here. You could have a licensing here in Mississippi. Now, a licensing in Mississippi is the interesting part. It's not the type of licensing that exists in other states. Currently, there is 6 states that you can have a private investigating license in that's not a private investigating licensure, like there is in Ohio or Connecticut or Florida or even Texas. You need a business license. But you still need a business license to be a licensed private investigator in the state of Mississippi. Some of the things that people think you need that you don't are a brick and mortar building, that you have to have a Mississippi driver's license, or that you have to residency in the state of Mississippi. That's not true. The 6 states are Colorado, Mississippi, South Dakota, Wyoming. Okay. You have Alaska. And then you have Idaho. Those states, anybody that's in this chat room, even convicted sex offenders and child predators, could go to these states and open up a private investigating license. It's incredible that these states exist, but there's more. When I started, there was only, I think, 3. Now there's 6. You can also be a private investigator in states if you're under an attorney. I could walk into the state of Kentucky right now, which I've never, ever done any work in, and be a private investigator if I decide to work under an attorney. And there is a lot of things that a private investigator could do, to answer your original question, that the cops, that the popos can't do. And that's why my business is through the roof. And that's what I couldn't wait to explain to you, because people say, well, I'll just call the cops.
So Jim, so on that real quick, not to interrupt you, but what can you give us, and then we're going to start moving right along into Dylan a little bit, but can you give us a couple of examples of things that PIs can do that local law enforcement would not be able to?
Well, first of all, I can leave the state. I can leave the county. I could go to states. A police officer in Biloxi, Mississippi can't go to Jackson and arrest somebody without certain criteria. He can't go to Idaho, can't go to Wyoming. So it's the difference between local police chief and Batman. There's absolutely no jurisdiction in some cases. Sure. Number 2, some of these detectives and police officers, they have 300 cases on their desk. And last I checked, the cops probably are not going to go stake out a TGI Fridays to see if somebody's wife is cheating on them. So I can do cases that cops won't touch, cheating housewives.
Things that are not necessarily illegal, right? Immoral, but not illegal. So.
Correct. But what does a private investigator do that a cop can't do? Let me tell you my favorite one. Lawyer. Cops are done. Can't talk to the guy no more. When somebody tells me lawyer, I just ask my second question. It don't mean shit to me. The other thing, and the most important thing, is I can dedicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to one case if I want. Cop's got 300 cases on his desk, rapes, murders. I found 16-year-old kids before. Called the sheriff's department. They said, hey, listen, somebody just killed a baby by putting it in an oven. We'll get to your 16-year-old runaway with daddy issues later. So what I can do is I can go ahead and definitely be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phone call for the family to look into information that police can't. So there is a hell of a lot of things. Cops, detectives, still the best in the world at what they do. But if it's a borderline crime or a missing person, which is what we're going to talk about today, you can't go pissing on the cops for something that's not a crime. They got police work to do unless there's a crime scene. Make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it makes sense. I understand. Like I've got a friend that's a PI, and he actually hunts down counterfeit cards, collectible cards. He finds counterfeit ones, and he travels all around. But the licensing, he was a cop for I think about 11 or 12 years before he went into this. For you as a PI, did you ever think about being a cop?
No.
No,
I could never, no. And let me tell you something, private there's a lot of, and this is where the area is gray to me. I won't stay on this long. To me, private investigators and police officers are apples and grapefruits. The worst private investigators I've ever met are cops. I'm going to be quite honest with you, because they're looking for a crime. 99% of the cases I work on, there's no crime. So I'm not looking, and I've worked on cases like Gloria Alvarado in Detroit. When I found her and had her delivered to the detective, he got fired the next day. How could a private investigator on his couch at the beach in Mississippi get a girl delivered to you in a Walmart and you couldn't find her? Demotion. He was gone. Call him.
Well, I mean, what was your? Because listen, like we've had lots of informants, lots of people find people that we understand that. And I think most supervisor would understand that just because you're a cop, that you were bound by certain rules, that it is easier sometimes for people to find them because we're bound. But what makes you think he got fired because you found him? I mean, did he call you and say, you got me fired?
Because his superior told him, if you go to that Walmart and that girl shows up with the news stations there because this guy put it all together, don't come back. He didn't come back. He had that conversation. So he talked to me about it. And listen, that wasn't my goal in that thing. But what I mean by this is I wasn't looking for a crime. And the reason that he got fired or demoted wasn't, I don't think, because I found him before he did. Like I said, he's got a lot bigger cases on his desk. It was because they couldn't prosecute the kid that set her and put her over at his grandparents' house for 2 weeks because I had poisoned the chain. But like I told the parents, do you want her found or do you want her prosecuted if she's found? Bring our daughter home, and that's what I did. That's a big difference between what a cop does and what a private investigator does, but I still bet on the cops and the detectives 99 out of 100 times, with the exception of the things I mentioned.
That's super interesting. Now let's go to this case. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, some hard, some easy, but I'm going to ask it from a cop's perspective. I don't know a lot about you. I don't know a lot. You reached out to us. I did do a little bit of research. I saw that there were some, I guess, some controversy there, but I'm going to get to that. I didn't dive into it. I want to be surprised. I want to be shocked. I want to come in with an open mind, if you will. So let's start from the beginning. How did you get into this case?
Into the Dylan Rounds case?
Yes, sir. Yep.
I had a couple of different, and I'm going to be careful how I say this, but a couple different people that follow this stuff. There is a whole community of people that think this is entertainment. And some of those people are quote unquote quasi-press. They contacted me, said, hey, this is close to a kid's case you worked in Boise, Idaho, a boy that I found in Bad Axe, Michigan. That boy's name was Anthony Smith. You could look it up. You could contact his parents. He'll vouch for me 100%. Anthony Smith, I rescued from a militia in Bad Axe, Michigan. I harassed the militia leader so much, they dropped him off at the police station. So that case had a couple of people that liked me in that area. And they said, you ain't going to believe this. We think this kid might have run away to a militia group. We think this kid might have. At first, when I was first
contacted, so somebody calls you. What point of Dylan being missing did you get the call? Do you think?
I want to say it was about 24 to 40. We had 48 to 72 hours into it, and the reason is Chase Venstra in this case, the first boogeyman that the family.
Guys, real quick, that's the homeless guy that we talked about that came out of the woods barefoot with a bloody face.
They had already had a bounty. The family put up a $5,000 bounty on that guy. And so it was already right around then. And the tough part, guys, is nobody knows when this kid went missing. I don't care what media outlets or the mother or a cop or whatever. They do not know exactly when this kid went missing. So was it day 5? Was it day 4? So basically I reached out to the family.
Okay. So we don't know when he went missing.
We just know the last time.
We just know the last
contact, physical contact and telephone. So physical contact, guys, if you remember from last week, would have been May 26th at the Saddle Sore Bar. Was the last time someone physically saw him. And then May 28th at 6:50 in the morning, he was on the phone with grandma. So that's the last contact that we know of. You're right. That doesn't mean that's when he went missing.
Right.
Because they don't then follow up and contact police until the 30th, correct? I believe.
When the family, I don't know when the family. Now, don't forget.
I think it was 2 days after he was on the phone with grandma is when because they didn't talk to him every day, right? So after a couple of days, it was kind of like, have you heard from Chase or from from Dylan? And it was like, no. And so someone was like, well, and they feared initially, or so they say, like a snake bite or a farming accident or something. Go to his property, proceed to call the police. So go ahead. Sorry.
So I don't want to say day 5, day 6. So based on those people that contacted me, and this has happened in a lot of cases, I contacted the family whose cell phone numbers were on a flyer, which is dangerous. I contacted the mother. Didn't go well. Contacted the father. We talked.
Okay. All right. What didn't go well about you contacted the mother?
He hung up on me. I'm a private investigator who talks fast. Yeah. I got a Florida number, but I'm based out of Mississippi, and the name of my company is Gulf Coast Investigation. So when she got a call, I think at that time she had already gotten a lot of calls from like maybe psychics or search and rescue people or people that just thought that this was interesting. So she hung up on me. She didn't know who I was. Called the father. I explained to whom I was. I told him I'd give him a free consultation. My business, and I heard you guys say this at the beginning that I was fired. You can't fire a guy who was paid in full up front. They can choose not to work with me. But I'm not an hourly.
Okay, that's a true distinction. Sure, yeah. I get that. You're right about that.
I've never been fired from a case.
Or they just they wanted a cease and desist, right? Essentially from the case.
Well, no, the mother did. The people that hired me were never on the cease.
So who hired you?
So when the parents did not want to have anything to do with me on a couple of phone calls, the people that I spoke with that told me to get a hold of them based on my other cases called me the next day and said, "Hey, how did it go? Did you talk to him?" Because there's like 35 unlicensed PIs in Idaho. Sure. And then none of them handle only strictly missing persons cases. I says, well, they hung up on me. And they says, oh, that ain't good. Let me give you the aunt's number and the grandparents' number. They're the ones that own the farm. I contacted Mrs. Wells. We talked for 2 or 3 days on the phone. She gave me strict marching orders. And I talked to the grandparents who own the property. They are high up in the Mormon church. This is the grandparents of the young man that went missing. And Miss Wells, the aunt, Venmo'd me the money up front and full and said, go to it. But here's the caveats in the case, and this is very important. And that's where this thing gets weird.
Okay.
Okay. Well, 2 questions there. I'm trying to unpack it all. One, so you get a call that the group that you solved the militia case for, they called you and said you might be interested in this case.
No, so let me explain this because I don't remember all of who these people are.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
There is a million of these Facebook pages out there. Some of them like me, some of them don't. Sure. They'll contact me if they know there's a case I worked in. They see me on shows like this and they like me. So they send me flyers all the time. One of them was this kid's flyer. So I called the numbers that was on their recommendations. The parents blew me off. I go back and we want to write a story. What did they say? And I said, they hung up on me. And they go, well, we don't want to write a story that the parents are hanging up on a private investigator who was going to talk to them for free. Would you at least call the grandparents? And when I did, that's when we went over things for a couple of days. They told me what was very important in this case from the beginning, and I should have known better. But we
you said, my next question was, you said strict orders?
Yeah.
What were the strict orders?
Well, and I'm going to shoot you straight. They said the kid's mother is a total whack job. She owes millions.
Now hold on. Clarify. This was the grandmother says. Now, is this a paternal or fraternal grandmother?
This is that's a great question. This is a conference call with both sets of grandparents. Okay. Now, the grandparents do not have children. The grandparents, Dylan Rounds' grandparents, adopted.
Paternal or fraternal?
This is paternal, father's side.
Father's side.
The father's side has the money. They're the Mormon. Okay.
And now what is high ranking in the Mormon church? Is that like, do you know what rank that is? Or is there is that a bishop? Is it a deacon?
I've learned more I'm Catholic and I've learned more about the Mormon faith. There's something called a Jack Mormon, which is kind of like a light Catholic. Like they believe in Christmas and Jesus and confession, but they don't go to church. There's Mormons that aren't in the church. And then there's Mormons that are part of the church. I don't know if they're bishops. And listen, guys, I get gone over with a comb on these things. I don't want to say they're bishops. I don't want to say they're high up in the community. You'd have to ask them.
So being that they're high up, that they're not Jack Mormons, these are like real Mormons, practicing Mormons.
These are practicing Mormons that are high up in their church that have a lot to do. Let me put it to you this way. When I talked to a couple of people in that area that were Jack Mormons, they said, woohoo, Jim, be careful. These people are big time Mormons. So you got to ask them. But the family is very devout. They believe in their faith. They adopted 2 children. The grandparents that own that property adopted 2 children because the mother couldn't have children.
Okay.
Those 2 children, which are Justin Rounds and the woman that hired me, Mrs. Wells, are half brother and sister. They share a same parent, but they were adopted together from somebody, but they share one parent.
Okay, and then Justin marries
marries
Dylan's
Candace
mom.
Cooley.
Right.
And Candace Cooley and Justin have 3 children, in which Justin Rounds pretty much raised the entire time. He had full custody and still does of the other 2 children who are not missing. So my strict marching orders by the high-up Mormon grandparents and their daughter, who was adopted, that hired me. And one of the reasons that I bring this up as far as being adopted and all that is I went over with the aunt, who said, I wish I would have hired a private investigator years ago to find my birth parents. That's where this all stems from. There was many conversations behind closed doors that had nothing to do with Dylan Rounds. And the first thing they told me, it says, well, why are you hiring me? The parents are there. There's helicopter pilots there. There's bloodhounds. There's police to some degree. And they says, we're hiring you because the mom is a whack job. And I says, why?
Okay, wait. Okay. All right, we got to slow down just a little bit. Slow down just a little bit.
I'm telling you what they said. I'm not going to show you.
No, I know. I gotta slow it down because you've probably told the story 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you. We're all hearing it for the first time. And
the
if
mother
I'm listening
and the father
to
are divorced. They had been divorced and had a brutal divorce that went on for
She's
a while.
remarried, correct?
I'm sorry?
I believe she's remarried, correct?
She's remarried, but she does not use his name. She doesn't use his name, especially in this case, because his son is currently in prison for drug trafficking.
all right, so Miss Cooley,
Wait,
Yes, the mother.
new husband?
Dylan's mom has a new
Her new
husband,
husband, her second
and
husband.
that son is
Her-
in prison
her
for
stepson.
drugs.
Yeah,
Now, is it prison or just jail?
I believe it was prison. I don't know if
it
it's
matters.
out yet. He wasn't somebody I stayed on long. I thought her last name was Cooley. So when I asked the grandparents, why don't you want me talking to the mother? What is my job here? Now, listen, not a licensed PI in Nevada, which is where the kid went missing. I'm not a licensed PI in Utah. I was not supposed to be boots on the ground there. My job in this case was not to solve a crime. We just talked about that. That's what the cops are for, if there's a crime. I'm not a search and rescue guy. They had a million of them out there. My job
I'm going to pause you real quick because I need to. In the chats, if you're not looking, it says, I need Boston Joe to whiteboard this.
That is really funny.
So,
Boston Joe is one of our sports guys who's done some sports shows, and he got up behind me one episode and whiteboarded and drew things out because it was getting confusing. But you're doing a great job of articulating it. We like to acknowlge our chat, so I apologize.
The last guy that I would want whiteboarding anything is a sports fan from Boston.
Right? That's so perfect. That's very shots fired there, Boston Joe.
For a while, so I know what it's like. But long story short, and I can slow it down, but I don't know.
No, it's fine. You're doing great. We have all the time in the world. We have as much time as you have, and I think because you wanted to come on our show, the way we do things is we don't put a time restraint on here. I want to deduct. I want to deduce everything. I want to know the totality of the circumstance so that I can make an educated decision at the end on what we think about this. But at the end, this is all about Dylan Rounds, and I try to maintain my empathy towards the family. I know we're going to get into some tough subjects because you said there's going to be some tough subjects. So, but I really, at the same time, I feel a moral obligation to keep things empathetic because at the end of the day, I cannot imagine losing one of my 4 children. Now, I want to get back to this whack job comment. Was that the official? Did they say she is a whack job, or did they just allude to that she's a whack job? And there's a difference because I know if my grandparents called me a whack job, I'd be pissed. But if they were like, Tansey's a little weird, he's a little off his rocker, that's okay if you assume that I'm a whack job from that statement.
Okay, you want me to take you through how they said it. So initially my conversation was with Justin Rounds' sister, and that is Miss Wells. She's the one that actually physically paid me. And what she said is, I says, why aren't we talking to mom and dad? And she goes, dad is extremely volatile right now, which I can understand. And they hate each other. Okay. The husband and Justin and his ex-wife, Candace Cooley, do not like each other. They can't stand each other. They've never had to be close to each other in quite some time. She didn't go into any details. She says it was an extremely volatile and messy divorce based on some embezzling from a trucking company from Candace Cooley and some cheating. Now, I didn't stay on that subject long. And I said, well, there's going to be some things here that I'm going to have to know about this young man, things I want to talk to the parents about, especially if they're in that town. She says, no, give it a couple of days. I don't even want them knowing we hired you. I says, well, wouldn't Justin at least want to know? They go, she's going to come into that town and she's going to do 3 things. She is going to fight with everybody. She is going to turn people off immediately. And she is going to make this about her. And I said, this is a mom. She's 4'11". She's tiny. She's a little woman. How could a mom do that? And they said, she didn't even have custody of her own children for the last 10 years. They said, and then they started. So then I says, well, let's get the grandparents on the phone. The grandparents got on the phone. And their words were, take everything with a huge boulder of salt. I says, but why can't we talk to the parents? You've hired me. I'm paid in full. I'm not going anywhere until this is over. And they says, we want to see what you find out without her being in charge of the case. She's going to do those 3 things, and we know it's coming. And guess what, guys? She did all 3 of those things in the first 11 days.
Okay. So you get paid in full. Am I allowed to ask you how much they paid you or no?
I want to say, and I've gotten that question a lot, I'd have to look at my Venmo. I'll tell you what, you want me to look at my Venmo so I can tell you the exact amount?
I don't know that it matters. Maybe a ballpark. Give me a ballpark.
Right around $4,000.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking like tens of thousands of dollars here.
No, I mean, I should have you negotiating these for me. No, I wish.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't forget now, let me tell you why that's inexpensive. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not flying out there, not living out there. I am gathering information on the phone from 2 time zones away to push to the grandparents to circumvent the mother.
Now listen, let me hold you there because I saw somebody in the comments mention that, and I wanted to say real quick on that when I saw it. I'm not arguing with that person because I don't know you. I'm still trying to learn you. I'm not trying to argue with that person in the chat. I can't remember who it was. But I will say that there is using your phones is magical. And I hate when they say that the cops didn't even go to the house and talk to the mom. We have phones, especially this is an inner city case, but that town is very small. And what I mean by this is if I call somebody, nobody knows I talked to that person. Right. If I go and knock on their door, somebody knows I talked to them. So a lot of times the cops will not show up if it's a weird kind of case like this, because we can actually get more information if we do have a cell phone number
without a physical presence.
And that doesn't put somebody in some kind of
witnesses don't feel
threatened. So I don't have a problem with you making phone calls from the couch. I know that was one point of contention. Listen, in the chats, I'm not pro this guy or anti this guy. He has to be on our show.
Yeah, you guys were just talking about the case.
We're just talking about the case. There's a lot of people in the chats I don't recognize, so just bear with us. I'm asking all the questions.
Let me just interrupt you real quick. Let me tell you who these people are.
No, it's okay. I'd rather not know.
No, they have followed me. They have
listen, I don't want
to.
I get it. We know that. We're not stupid. We figure that out. I don't care. But I mean, I'm sure they have their reasons to, and I'm not discrediting them as I'm not discrediting you. So let me just keep on track and ask questions. I don't pay a lot of attention. I just thought that was one comment where they said about the couch. I don't have a problem with making phone calls to complete an investigation. I've never had a problem with that. I've been an advocate, so I'd be a hypocrite if I try to. Sure. But I just wanted to clear that up for somebody in the chats. Now let's talk about you got the phone call. You talked to Miss Wells. I'm tracking on this. I'm great. Now you've taken the case. Where do you make your first phone call? From you get that thing, I want to know a PI's mind. What you get that call and they say you got the green light. Do you call the police first? What do you call first?
Well, the first person I call is the person that they couldn't get a hold of. There was a guy named Chase Venstra out there, this boogeyman bleeding in the desert, barefoot, stories of him getting in somebody's car. He's this axe murderer in the woods that the family has an illegal $5,000 bounty on.
Okay, so now let's digest that because a lot of people haven't heard this case. How does Chase Venstra come into this scenario?
With me?
You're good.
Yeah, no, just in general. Like, let's give some backstory.
I don't want to monopolize. Let her explain it. She can explain how he comes into this probably better than I could because he was already a big player and there was a $5,000 bounty put out for him. The family believed he killed their son. So
until they didn't, right? So that's the thing. It was to the best of my knowledge, and again, like you've been investigating this a lot more in detail than I have. I understand that, but Chase came out of the wood line, right? Like that's essentially the narrative that we're given, the verbiage we're given. Dylan's out by his truck, driving down the road. Someone saying this guy comes out what we hear is that he's barefoot, bloodied face, asks Dylan to use his phone, right? Dylan lets him use his phone. He then asks the story we get, right? Just civilians out here listening to it, is that then he asked Dylan for a ride. Our third hand knowledge is that Dylan tells his mother in a phone call within a couple of days about this encounter, tells mother that he did not, in fact, give this man a ride. We then find out later it's most likely that he did. So that is my knowledge of how Chase came in the picture. And we will talk about it later, Jim, but we know that also at some point we've got Kurt has some beef with Chase. Like, come to find out, this guy isn't just the rando in the woods. They all kind of know each other. And so then we have Mom at a different point saying, we've cleared Chase. When she says we, she's talking as though she means law enforcement, but she meant the family. We've cleared Chase. He's no longer of interest to us.
I did hear that. I've always thought that was very odd. I've got a lot of oddities as a police officer hearing her interview, and we'll go into that later. So, okay, so Chase Vinstra is just this character in the story that comes out, as she says, the Woodline. Okay, and as we heard the story originally as True Crime Junkies, nobody knew this guy existed. Like,
I'm a disgruntled housewife. Right,
she's a disgruntled hot wife. Hot wife?
Not what I said. I'm actually no kind of wife, but housewife is what I said. I was playing off a Jim.
I got you.
Right, Jim?
So she, as she described it, comes out of the woodwork, whatever. At that time, nobody knew who this guy was. Continue.
So the family had already pretty much put out flyers all over the place that this guy was the boogeyman. There was a $20,000 reward for Dylan Rounds. There was a $5,000 reward to talk to this man. He contacted one of the family members through Facebook, but they didn't speak to him on the phone. Nobody could get a phone number on him. I have a real issue with people hiding behind Facebook and fake names. And that's why my phone number, which I was hoping you guys would have it up here during my whole conversation.
We'll get it up there. We will get it up there.
24/7. I never hide my phone number. There's one person, there's one guy, and my phone is on 24/7. You get the real guy, and that's been the same number since I was in high school. So the bottom line is the family had a guy that they thought was involved in this. I didn't know much about the case. I only knew what the parents wanted me to give them information about their son's lifestyle and things that existed out there. So what I did was I looked into Chase Vinstra. I did a complete background. You want to know how the PI did it? Well, this is what I did. I don't know how other PIs would do it, but this is what I did. I looked into his background. Filthy, disgusting human being. Bottom line.
Okay. So you looked into Chase Vinstra. I put your name up there, by the way, with your phone number on there, which I'm very proud because we don't have a producer in studio tonight. So I did all this by myself. Okay. Chase Vinstra, what you say he's a dirtbag. What kind of dirtbag is this guy? What did you find out about him?
I mean, well, the thing that stuck out first in my mind is torturing and abusing animals. When I see that, I'm like, ugh.
Where did you see that at? Where did you see that at?
He had been arrested for it. It was in his jacket. Background checks.
Okay.
Have you ever run a background check on him?
Not on him. No, I don't do background checks anymore. I'm not a law enforcement officer anymore. I am just a podcaster.
Right. So what I did was I ran a background check on him, and then I looked at his family. I wanted to know what kind of people this guy, and what I found shocked me. He was as bad. And listen, I deal with the real things. I've talked to cartel guys. I've talked with sex offenders. We had one of them come on a radio show. I've seen him. You know what I mean? I've dealt with them. These people don't scare me. I've seen the thing, and they're a long way from it. This guy had a pretty bad history in a town where there's like 200 people and 74 registered sex offenders. Let me explain that to you.
Okay, yeah, let's slow that down and say that again, because that's important.
There's roughly 200 people in that town. Now, they say there's 54 people in the town, but if you kind of just go like the town, right, the desert little area where all these people congregate, it's about 200 people. 74 of them are registered perverts.
Now that I read myself as well.
You've substantiated that these guys are registered perverts.
Yeah, not that I'm not saying that you need me to back you up, Jim, but I'm just saying for anybody listening, like I also, something that I've read about, that there's a big piece of this pie graph there in terms of population has registered sex offenders.
And I'm guessing that's where you'd want to go. Well,
In the middle-
you know, maybe if you're trying to get better, because I mean, are there a lot of children out
Well, there's no recidivism rate on that. So I would argue that they're not going to get better, but I would say that they're also not going to be around people and left to their own devices at that point.
You think that's why they go there?
I think they go there because the closest cop is 56 miles away. They can squat on public land and they don't have to answer to anybody. Every arrest in this case has been made for something else that they never were arrested before and had millions of possibilities before. The people that are in jail right now probably have everything to do with this, and none of them have been arrested for Dylan Rounds, at least not initially. So they had a nice little pocket in Elko County with that sheriff's department. We're 56 miles away. These people all policed each other. They were registered sex offenders, perverts, and those, listen, 74 out of 200 are sex offenders. Those aren't felons that beat the piss out of their wife. Those aren't felons that smacked around children. Those aren't felons that robbed people, that have drug issues. Those are just the ones that like to fiddle kids. And you take a 17-year-old kid and you put him in that meat grinder with those people.
Okay, hold on. So they put him there. Let me stop you there.
Sure.
Let's talk about Dylan Rounds, because you're talking about Dylan Rounds, I assume, right? They put him. One, who would they be that put him there? Because the way I understand this is that Dylan Rounds is a farmer, and that Dylan Rounds, and look, I've done my history on Dylan Rounds, because as a police officer, I did think at the very beginning of this case, I said this on our initial show where we know nothing, where guys, we did this not for fun, but we do this just for awareness, but it is an entertainment thing. It's always an awareness thing where she talks about a true crime case and I just react as a police officer. I don't get to read these in these cases.
To be fair, it's generally speaking not been an ongoing case. Like the things we talked about before Dylan were in the past, you know, one was solved, one was unsolved, but they were long ago things. So this is the first time on this format on this show that we've done something that's currently being spoken about.
Right. Normally you're just shocking me. I'm responding and I'm saying what I would do as a cop or answering cop questions.
Sure.
And by the way, Andrea is doing a great job. This is her 5th podcast of all time. And we're so happy that she's on the channel. And I'm so happy that she's a new host. Y'all. She's a noobs and we love her. So when you first told me about this case, the first thing I said was, that is not true, that there's no way a kid moves out to the desert at 17 years old unless one, the parents are dirtbag, like he hates his parents, or two, he's not able to get along with his parents and he just got as far away as he could.
They either booted him or he left.
Because I don't find that somebody is just obsessed with farming and then just moves out there. Now, I said that then, but then as you called me, I got excited about the case and I started actually trying to do some like real police work. All the photographs, and I understand that social media can be misleading, but from a very young age, it really does look like this guy is just cut from a different cloth, as in he is a farmer and he loves farming. I was accused. I didn't smoke pot in school. I didn't drink alcohol in school, and I did not have sex in school. And it wasn't because I was a homosexual. It's because I was obsessed with surfing in the ocean and fishing and anything on the ocean. Just as my kids are obsessed with skateboarding to this day. I understand that a kid could be obsessed with something like this. And as I look at his pictures, Jim, I do see that this guy looks like he's obsessed with farming. So when you say they, what do you have to substantiate? And who is they that put him in the desert besides himself?
The grandparents. The grandparents bought that farm without the parents knowing about it. The kid dropped out of high school as a freshman. He didn't complete his freshman year. And it's because of the COVID. See,
let me ask you this, Jim. I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, kind of like Eric touched on earlier, you have said this a lot. You've touched on the story so much that I probably will have to interrupt just to get the word in because you're so used to telling it, and that's great. But did he drop out? Some of the narrative is that he dropped out to get the farm, right? To garner the farm from his grandparents who purchased it for him. Then, or did he just drop out and they weren't pleased with what they saw and they threw him out to the farm?
I don't know because I've gotten 5 different versions of what it is. I could tell you what the people that hired me told me. I could tell you what his grandmother.
Yeah, let's do that. What the people, Miss Wells, what did she tell you?
Well, Miss Wells didn't tell me anything. The grandmother, his grandmother, who has a background in education, tried for years to get this kid to study in school. And hey, listen, I wanted to do nothing but play arena and indoor football the entire career that I had in elementary school and middle school and in college. I wanted to be a full scholarship athlete in the NC2A, and I was able to do that. But I know I had to go to college in order to do that. You didn't have to do that in farming, but the kid wanted to be a farmer. Now,
Sure.
last I checked, they have farms in Idaho too. So here's where this gets real dicey. And depending if you're a man or a woman, if you're on the right or if you're on the left, the kid's home life was not great. It wasn't great. It was better with the father, but the divorce was nasty. He has 2 siblings. The bottom line is the grandmother told me, we tried everything. We bought him a farm out there. Now, as I'm being hired for this, there's fights. Let me put it to you this way, because I don't know if you guys are parents or not. I don't have children.
We both
have kids.
Okay. So imagine your parents bought your daughter or your son at 17 years of age a farm in the desert. Or they sent them to a horseback riding camp, or to NASCAR camp, or to space camp, or to any of the things your kids are into. What are your kids into? Gaming? I don't know. But pick whatever that is, and your 2 parents take that kid and say, hey, I know you're fighting with your parents. I know your dad, Mr. Rounds, wants you to go to school. I'll just buy you a 600-acre farm. That kid ain't sticking around anyway. He's already got the motivation to go. Last I checked, they have farms in Idaho Falls too. They have farms in West Virginia. Listen to me. They have
but those farms, it was funny because on the show last week, Montello, I looked up, like, while she was talking, I was looking up farms. Dude, that farmland is dirt cheap. Like, I'm trying to buy me a $15,000 fucking 20-acre farm.
You're not buying 10,000 acres in Montana.
So listen to what you just said. As a cop, you solved this yourself. So you said you looked into it. How much is, the property's cheap out there?
Yeah, very cheap.
You're going to send your 17-year-old kid there. You should probably look at the crime rate. You should probably look at whatever it is that a kid would, and they either didn't do it, didn't care, or ignored it. So it took me 30 seconds to find 74 out of 200 registered sex offenders. I don't care if they bought this kid a farm in the Mojave Desert. Okay. It's not that it's in the desert. And it's not that it's cheap. You get cheap farms in West Virginia too. You get cheap farms in areas in California. They bought a cheap farm in the middle of a meat grinder with registered sex offenders, guys. So while you're looking at what it costs, if I'm somebody who's going to send a minor, and by the way, I don't know 17-year-olds that need a 600-acre farm. You could get a 50 or 60-acre farm in Idaho Falls for about $200,000. I've looked into it, and you know what else it doesn't have? It doesn't have sex offenders. Not to the degree that this place did, and it's not hours and hours away. I hate to be this way, but how'd that work out for them? And then they did it without the parents' knowledge. Now, you got to wonder what the motivation is here. And this goes back to when I finally got Chase Fenster on the phone, which was your original question, because that's the most important key part of this whole thing. But they took that kid and they put him down there, and they put him down there without the knowledge of the parents and without the blessing of the parents. And once he was down there, well, it is what it is. COVID hits. There's not much school anyway. This kid's, and the other thing that irritates me is the mom has gone on countless radio shows, countless television shows, and says, well, when my son got his GED, I called the state. He never got a GED. Why lie about that? Because she is a mother.
Here's an interesting fact. And again, I'm not, an interesting fact is that in the Casey Anthony, which is right behind me, the Casey Anthony case, that was another point of contention. There was that she did not graduate high school. She did not get a GED, but the parents went the parents went as far as to throw her a graduation party and do graduation photos with cap and gown.
Do it.
Which I think is odd, but okay.
It's odd, but it's reasonable when someone who's trying to, I'm not saying it's right, but it's reasonable when somebody tries to put on a picture, right? Like Keeping Up with the Joneses, a story as old as time. It happens.
It happens.
Again, not right.
Now let's say that your theory is right here and that you suspect that. Now, do you think Dylan wanted that farm at all? Do you think Dylan?
Oh, definitely. Okay. I don't have a theory. I'm telling you, that's what they did. That's unequivocally true. They put him down there because it was cheap. They bought it. They probably had connections down there. I'm starting to see that a little bit more. And they
what connections did they have down there?
I'm sorry?
What kind of connections did they have down there?
The family's involved in trucking and horses and farming and all kinds of stuff. If you see some of the people that were down there, I think had backgrounds with the grandparents and the fathers. I don't know all those intricacies of it. By the way, this is a case that's almost 50 days old. I worked on it for a total of like 12 days, 4 of which I wasn't even talking to the parents. And this is almost 30 days ago. And all I can tell you is they still don't have shit. They don't know where the kid is. And the only thing that they know is I don't know what I'm talking about. So what I'm telling you here at some point is going to have to be crossed off the list. And
Gotcha.
if they don't want to do that, well, we see where they're at. Let me put it to you this way. Let's do it. You did a sports radio talk show, right? Okay. They got rid of Baker Mayfield and they put in Deshaun Watson and they're 0-8. They have shit. At what point are you going to say, you know what? At some point, we're going to have to give this guy his due or go with somebody else. But they fell on their sword. There's only one person that's spearheading this investigation down there, and they haven't come up with shit. The starting quarterback is terrible. And unfortunately, because the backup quarterback or the guy that was there in camp is not what they want based on what he found, they decide to torch him publicly and go more into that.
Okay, well, let's hold off because we're jumping ahead.
Let me say this real fast. I just saw that Turf commented a minute ago, TERF, that said that Dylan was put out there with some dangerous people. And I will say that we touched, if you guys listened last week, we touched on it briefly, but there was an interview, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was someone who lives around the area, one of the local ranch hands. He really has nothing to do with Dylan's specific case, right? But they were asking him just about the area specifically, like, would you live in Lucin? Would you live in Montello? Would you live wherever? And when they mentioned Montello, because the Saddle Sore Inn is such a topic of conversation, and most of our cast of characters eventually are going to come out of that, right? And he said he had a family, and he said, oh no, well, I wouldn't live in Montello. And they said, why? And he was like, it's no good. And as you guys, full disclaimer, never been to Montello. I really literally know nothing about it outside of this case. But in terms of, I know that Dylan didn't live there. He lived 30 minutes from it, a few miles from Montello on the other side.
20
onto the
plus miles, yeah.
Yeah, like on the, just on the other side, the border of Utah. But that's another thing to consider, right? It is still your minor child at that time. And you're kind of throwing them out to the wolves in the sense. I'm not saying that Candace, you guys, look, I'm not saying the parents did. I'm not saying that the grandparents did. I'm just saying, like, however it happened, we have a minor child living somewhere alone in a place that's really other grown
Dangerous.
people knew were not necessarily, the best place to be.
That is
And I'm not speaking for the whole town. I'm not speaking for all the people.
How about the fact that, guys, you're sugarcoating this way too much. How about the fact that he's an uneducated 17-year-old kid in a land of pedophiles in the middle of a desert where hardened farmers can't make it work, sent miles away from anybody, barely a driver's license. I know a lot of people that won't send their kids to Ohio State because it's too dangerous. I know people that won't send their kids to the University of Florida because it's too dangerous their freshman and sophomore year.
They're probably right.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong.
Let's just say that there's no pedophiles. 17-year-old is going to operate heavy machinery. The first thing the mother said is, we thought he was bit by a snake, or maybe there was a farm accident. But let's just say none of that is an issue here. He's the LeBron James of farmers, right? He's ready to be the world's greatest.
I haven't heard of her.
17 years of age. He goes out there alone, no satellite phone, no security footage, no deer cameras. He's living in a makeshift camper, a trailer with a wood stove.
No, listen. Look. I agree with you there. Okay. When I first came on to this case, again, reacting to it, I said from the beginning, I thought that was very odd.
Who does that? Would you guys do that with your children?
We are a very. I'm a homeschooled parent. We homeschool all 4 of our children. Yeah. And I do give my children more freedom than most people would like. My kids are competitive skateboarders, and my youngest is 4, and he competes. He drops into concrete bowls that parents won't allow their kids to even go near at 13. Now, I thought it was odd that at 17, he was in an area, like you said, not knowing anything about the case. I do think that's odd. And I do think that's something that some people have to speculate. I know that there's a girl in the chat, Candace. I'm not sure who Candace is.
She said that people thought she was his mom.
Okay. She's not.
It's not
this
you,
is not
though.
the
It's
same
not
Candace.
Cooley. No.
And she mentions a great point here. I'll just show it because I know how to do that. She says, why is he trashing presumed to be deceased young man? And I don't know if you are meaning to trash him, and I don't know what part you did, but she obviously heard that. And I'm not going to discredit her for hearing that.
Do you believe I've trashed him?
No, I don't, but I'm trying to focus so much. But what I think you're trying to say right now, and I'd like to relay this to Candace, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to say is that the young man has been put in a very bad situation and has been allowed to do that. And you can't count on a 17-year-old to go and look up a sex offender registry in a desert, right? No 17-year-old's going to do that. Also, we know, listen, I joined the army at 18. I made some terrible decisions while I was in Afghanistan, still did things over there, but it's a miracle that I lived, because we're not thinking as a 25-year-old. I say that my prime year was 33, which I think Andrea just turned 33. So this might be your prime.
Oh, that's cute. Thank you for reversing all of your previous statements.
So my thing here is that a 17-year-old, it's not his responsibility to see that they're sex offenders and he's moving into a child. But it is very odd to me that the grandparents would send somebody, or parents, or whoever. I said this from the beginning. Very, very odd that you would send your child out. It's like the Oregon Trail.
Dysentery.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's not the responsibility of the 17-year-old, because the 17-year-old is still a child. Technically, the parents could have been charged for not letting that kid go back to school their freshman year.
No. Well, okay, you're their freshman year, sure. But at 17, you can emancipate from your parents.
Well, he didn't emancipate. He didn't.
Yeah, but as long as
and you guys, at the end of the day, let's not get in the weeds. Truancy is not going to be looked upon in Box Elder County, Utah. If the dude's got a backhoe,
he was in Idaho. Well, I mean, maybe that's the same thing. But what I'm telling you is this: listen.
Okay.
You guys are sugarcoating it. And I would like for you, and I'll explain why. And this is what I wanted to bounce off of you. Can you please put that lady's comment up there again? Would you mind doing that? Candace. Her name is Candace.
Keep in mind, Jim, give us a second. Eric is doubling as host and producer.
Well, I don't. We can address Candace here in a minute. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get into that.
Well,
I want to keep this about
you put
Dylan.
A photo and her name and her information up there who says I'm trashing it, and I'd like to explain why that is.
Well, I want you to train. I want you to do that. But if we start doing that in the chat, we're going to get lost forever.
She's a former client whose kid was found in Los Angeles under a bridge and refused to go home to her because he'd rather do drugs. And when he was found.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, no, listen, that's very private. I don't want to put.
Well,
that. These are all very
family.
I know. I know.
She has a current husband who's a drug addict who.
Well, okay, so I think that she put her comment up, right, and so then we address it.
And I think
we even said that you weren't really trashing the kid.
Her comments.
I don't think you were trashing the kid. I don't think you're trashing the kid, but I don't want to trash her kid either. Let's just keep on track with what you're going on. I don't like.
Well, I was going to trash her kid. I was going to trash her, but
I get it. Okay. Hold on. Let's bring this back. Let's reel this back in real fast. So we're up to this weird guy in the desert. We're not up to
the weird guy in the desert. Hold on. We got to stop right there, my friend.
Okay.
I'm not going to let it go that I said anything that was trashing the kid.
I agreed with you that you were not.
We said that you were not trashing the kid.
This isn't just for you. There's millions of people listening. The kid's 17 years old, right?
Yes.
He's a minor.
Sure.
He's a high school dropout.
Okay.
Tell me when I say something that's not a fact. He's sent into a desert to have a farm that's 600 acres, having never done it before. There's 74 out of virtually 50% of all the people there are pedophiles. Probably larger than 50% are felons, and he's sent down there. And he's sent down there without much education, with no security, with no help. With absolutely no satellite phone. Tell me when I'm saying something.
No. I agree with you, and I think what your point. I would say I don't know you, but I'm saying I agree with you. I think all that is odd. As a police officer, those are the questions I would absolutely professionally ask. Obviously, we're on a podcast and we're being a little bit more candid. I think, but being the fact that this is a missing person, I think what happens, Jim, and we're going to move past this very quickly, but I think what it is that it's an emotional thing. People get emotional because you're speaking in facts, and sometimes there isn't a lot of empathy that goes with facts, and sometimes that hurts people's feelings, and that's okay. I try to, we have to remember that as a cop. I've always got to try to maintain empathy because these are things. One time, just to give you an example of how I fucked up empathy is you remember when you had the flip phones and you could have ringtones? Remember when somebody
Yeah.
called you could have a ringtone?
Yeah.
I had a ringtone and it was "We're Gonna Die Young" by Kesha. Now that was my ringtone because I always felt I was going to die young because of my military
I'm
past.
sorry, that's not
My
funny.
God, it was "We're Gonna Die
I
Young."
know.
You're
such
whatever.
a pretty 16-year-old
So I went to
girl.
a suicide call one time. It was very sad. The gentleman hung himself. It was bad.
Jesus,
me and
and
the
your
mother.
phone
Listen, me
rang?
and the
I'm
mother are looking at it. My sergeant calls me to see if it's in fact a suicide. My phone goes off. "We're gonna die young." Da-dun, da-dun-dun-dun-dun. So of course, unempathetic, very bad. The mom was very upset, didn't like it. So it's safe to say that some people are just not going to like facts when they're given without empathy. That's okay. We're going to move on because I don't care about that. I do care about the facts. And I do agree in this part of the segment here. I totally agree with your facts. This kid has no business being out in the desert by himself. I'll say that as a parent of 4
That's
kids.
all I'm getting at. Thank you.
You're right. You're right. I love it.
Listen, if anybody disagrees with me, I advise anybody. Candace, Stephanie, Bob, Trevor.
Don't worry
Mike.
about these guys. Let's not.
No, hold on. I'm not. You got to let me finish, partner.
Okay.
Whoever's in these chat rooms to go ahead and take their 17-year-old daughters or 17-year-old sons and take them to Montello. I'll tell you what. I'll pay for it.
Here's what I'm
I'll
gonna
pay
maybe
for 'em.
rock the boat a little bit because I'm
Stick
pretty.
them out there.
My
See how
kids
that
are pretty
goes.
sheltered. My kids are whatever. I would not personally. I can say that I would not be thrilled with my kids at 17 doing that, right? At 18, so we have that 1 year
you
line
back?
of where it's go off and do whatever, right? Move across the country, move across the world, study abroad, do whatever. You're 18. So what's a big difference in 17 and 18? Not a whole lot, really, if you know your kid. My point is, I don't agree with it. I'm not okay. I don't think that I would do it. But also, it's really not a hill to die on. It's not a hill to die on, is my point.
My wife was sent to go backpacking around Europe.
Yep. So my point is,
At
it's not a
17,
hill to die
which
on.
is-
Like on this whole case, him being there at 17, I get it's odd. It's not what I would do. Oh, thank you. But it's
Don't
The
not.
big difference is at 17,
Okay.
you could keep it from happening. That's
Yeah.
the big difference.
Sure.
You're right. You're right. And so I want to move on past that because we've beaten this dead horse. I agree. She agrees. Her and I together agree from a law enforcement standpoint. I would not put my 17-year-old in that kind of position. And I think that the grandparents have some kind of responsibility.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Okay,
Because that's
but let's start. So, okay, I'll ask you that question since you want to ask that question. Now we got to remember it's a theory. We're all basing on theories.
not a
there.
theory. It's not a theory.
What factual
What's your
information do you
take?
have? What is your
Sure.
take on why he's out there?
So when I first interviewed Chase Venstra, let's go back to the original boogeyman, because then we went to here, then we went to there. Guys, there is no way to have a discussion with a private investigator about any of these cases without so-called trashing people. I'm sitting here taking trash left and right. It's why I like doing these shows, because I will take all hits from every direction. It's why you see my cell phone number up there. But what I'm going to tell you is if you're going to allow people to do that to me, you got to let me have my turn at bat in my part of the inning. And you're doing that, and I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So the bottom line here is that Chase Venstra got on the phone with me after and by the way, his family, beautiful people, got an incredible father. This is the boogeyman that the $5,000 the parents put out for.
Chase
will
Ventura.
say I'm interested in that. I don't know his family. I do know his background. I know that parents don't okay, you can have someone grow up to have whatever lifestyle they have, right? And you can't, that's not always on the parents. They're people of free will. And he may have a beautiful family, but he definitely does have an extensive background, correct? Would you agree with that, Jim?
Well, that's what I said. He even told me he's a piece of shit.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what's funny is I always open up with, "Hi, my name's Eric. I'm a piece of shit."
Oh, no, he told me, he says, listen, everything everybody's saying is right about me. But what I
Okay.
needed to do in order to get how was I able to get him on the phone and nobody else was?
There we go. How did you get a hold of him?
Well, that's a great question. Let me tell you how that happened.
Okay.
So what I did was I got a hold of his mom and I got a hold of his sister-in-law, his brother.
So
and they
he's
got
married. Chase is married, or his brother's married?
Brother's married.
Brother's married. Got it.
Chase has, I think, an ex-wife or baby mama somewhere. They've called the shows and wanted to talk to us. So basically what I did is I said, let's get this guy on the phone. Well, he'll only message us through Facebook. I said, no, he's going to talk to me. They said, you'll never get him on the phone. So what I did is I called his brother. He says, oh, you're a private investigator. He says, the cops are trying to throw away the key on this kid. He hates cops. You're not a cop? No. Where are you from? Mississippi? Oh, I can get him to talk to you. I says, well, let me talk to your parents. His mom's a retired school teacher. Dad had a business background. His brother had a great job. His sister-in-law had a great job. And his 17-year-old son, to my knowledge, had never had any issues. So they make a phone call. And this is another thing, a private investigator. And this is why my business is through the roof. And especially over the last month, there's a hell of a lot of black folks. There's a hell of a lot of Puerto Ricans. There's a hell of a lot of white folks out in the desert that don't want to talk to cops. They don't want to talk to y'all. Not even close. They don't want to talk to the parents because the parents got a $5,000 bounty out. You got a private investigator in another state? I'll talk to that guy. I've seen him on YouTube. This guy's a little kooky. He's out there, but he can't arrest me, and he's not a parent. So I'll talk to him. The father brokered
Makes
it.
sense.
He got Chase Venstra on the phone with me, and I said, Chase, I want to get you out of this. There are people looking for you. And let me tell you something. Justin Rounds, his buddies, they're not going to arrest you. They're going to tear you apart at the fucking joints. I said, so you need to talk to me. I'll broker this. Got on the phone with me. We talked about half a dozen times. He was incredibly intelligent on the phone. He was incredibly charming on the phone. Sort of like Casey Anthony, who you got a picture of back there in her meetings. The difference is this kid was talking to me about this, and he didn't hold back. Now, was he telling me the complete truth? I don't know. But I got him on the phone. Nobody else could do that.
Now I'll give you. Listen, you have a way of getting people talking on the phone. You called
reading
me,
the room like we talked about earlier.
You called me to ask him on the show, and I thought, dude, if anybody in the world would have called me the way you did, I'd have hung up on them and I would have blocked their phone number. Maybe called the police. You do have a way of getting people to talk to you, so I am interested in this very much. You have a very weird technique. When you talk to Chase like this, what was his response? I mean, because you're very candid. You don't seem like you probably don't put on a face for anyone. You're probably the same guy all the time. Yes or no? Okay. Did he take well to that? Did he respond well to your authority? I
didn't have any authority. Chase Venstra had a $5,000 bounty on him, and every redneck in that area was looking for him because there was a $5,000 bounty on him and a $20,000 on a kid out in an area where they're stealing garbage from each other. So he was happy to talk to somebody that could help get his story out there. I didn't need to talk like this to him. He was actually extremely grateful that somebody he could talk to that wasn't a cop. And I said, listen, you know. And
I'll give you that. I mean, listen, I've had ride-alongs with me in a police car, and they don't wear a uniform. And somebody be like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to him because he's not in a uniform. So criminals are going to want to talk to a guy like you.
Agreed. And
because you don't talk like a cop.
Separate note, Chase seemed pretty out there already, right? So once Chase's name started getting out there,
does Chase have a drug history?
He was making
yes.
Yes. He was also making phone calls, correct? Like he was making on his own volition saying, hey, Andrea, I'm not saying that it's Chase or not Chase, but Chase was making phone calls saying, hey, I'm not, like, I know you guys are like hearing my name and I was there and trying to make a phone call and get a ride from this kid. I'm not a person, like I was not a part of it. So he was pretty forefront, right? Like with you and then with anyone else in that moment, because he was personally trying to clear his own, his name or, reputation, right?
Yes.
He got on the phone with me and I said, did you kill this kid? And he said, no. I said, are you a dirtbag? Are you what everybody says you are? He said, yes. I said, let me ask you this. And I'm paraphrasing here, okay?
Sure.
I said, where were you picked up? Mile marker 53. His father was on one of the calls with him. This wasn't one phone call. It's half a dozen phone calls over the course of a couple of days. I said, will you talk to the family? He said, yes. I said, will you talk to law enforcement? He said, yes. I said, let me get this out of it. We talked about him being seen on film at a Little Caesars. We talked about how he could have got to the area. And so once he told me his story, which I believe half of what I see and none of what I hear, I asked him, I says, tell me two things about this case, about this kid's disappearance, about this kid's life, and about your life in that town that nobody knows, that the cops aren't going to ask questions of, and that might help me find out what happened to this kid. Whether Chase did it or not, tell me two things. And you know what his first thing was? He's gay. He's got a 60-year-old boyfriend and everybody knows it. And the guy that's his boyfriend hates me. And I hate him.
Okay. So Chase tells you that Dylan is gay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the first person that's told you he's gay?
I had
Did the parents, did the grandparents,
I
did they tell you?
I asked the parents a bunch of questions or the grandparents when they first hired me. That was one of the things because I didn't see any pictures with girls. I didn't see any prom.
Oh yeah, but that's not a big deal. I would have been the same character. I would have been the same guy, dude.
Well,
I was not interested in girls.
Well, and I would have asked the same question about you.
That's
It
fine.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you are, but it would have come
Yeah.
up.
I mean, they call me transy on the show because I look like a transsexual. I don't know what makes me look like a transsexual, but
You're really pretty.
shut up. It's my hair. I have long hair.
Just because you asked I mean, you're allowed I asked a lot of other questions that didn't have anything to do with this. Was he violent? Did he have a drug problem? I mean, I asked a lot of questions. Listen, in this day and age of cell phones and photos, there isn't too many that don't at least have one picture with the opposite sex. But then again, I didn't know he was out of school by his freshman year. So there was a lot of things I didn't know. So Chase Venstra says, yeah, everybody in town knows it. And the guy that he was hanging around the most and spending nights at his trailers and never coming home, which is why his place was so messy, which is why was his boyfriend. And I didn't believe him. I was like you. There's no way this kid's a good-looking kid. He's a hard worker. He's a farmer. No, he had to say. I was more shocked that he thought that the guy he could get was 60 years old.
Now, Chase,
I think
listen,
it's more predatory on the 60-year-olds part.
Yeah, very predatory.
Especially when he was 17 out there, because he had known him the entire time he was out there, which means the relationship probably started when he
It's
was
much more
minor.
grooming than it is. I'm going to blame
Now,
Dylan for it, right?
Now, for me is if Chase killed a guy. Hang on, if Chase killed a guy, if Chase Venstra is a suspect in the case, and I think he is a case. I know the mom says he's not. I still think he is. I think everybody's a suspect in that town. But I'm not going on the word of a methed out weirdo from the desert.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. So I'm not even going to believe that Dylan is gay on this guy.
Just based off
Because
of Chase.
if he killed you, if he killed Chase, if Chase killed Dylan, it would be a very easy thing to be like, well, he was gay, thinking that maybe has a negative connotation to it, or that it could send you down a rabbit hole. Now, I would not listen to that at all. Why was it important for you to know? And I'm asking, I don't know the answer, but I feel like you get very passionate about this. And I've seen that it is a point of contention. I don't know why. Because I think it's okay to have a theory that somebody's gay.
It's not a theory.
But why would it be important to the case if he was gay?
Okay, well, let's get into that. So I did exactly what you said. You and I are spending an incredible amount of time based on the fact, because it's a trigger word nowadays. Calling somebody gay is a trigger word. I didn't think much about it. I says, he's lying. He's full of shit. I thought the exact same thing you did. I was more interested in where he showered, where he slept, where he ate, if it was into drugs and all that. But I had to ask that question. And when I started asking that question to other people in town who were school teachers, who were relatives.
So you talked to a school teacher in which town?
That town.
Lucin?
Montello? Lucin?
Lucin's where he lives.
Guys,
okay.
listen.
Okay.
You got to let me finish. When I'm talking about the school teacher that's in the town, okay, I'm not necessarily saying, I'm not calling people and saying, is Dylan Rounds gay? What I said is, hey, listen, he spent a hell of a lot of time with a guy named Kurt Wadsworth. What can you tell me about Kurt Wadsworth? My son caught him in drag one time and they don't even know about the conversation with Chase Venstra. Well, my son caught him in drag one time when he brought him a pizza at the bar. What?
Well, hang on.
We touched on that. So do you remember? Because you talked about all your Halloween costumes. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I listen. I've been caught in drag a whole bunch of times. But that's just because I'm retarded.
You've been caught in all sorts of.
I mean, like if I start drinking, I'll put on anything. I'll be honest with you. I'll come out in a thong and a cowboy hat. I don't care.
So,
but I'm not a kinky child molester either.
If one person,
we talked about how last week we talked about how, because remember I said it was like a far removed, guys. It was like a the owner's daughter's boyfriend, whomever, walked in on Kurt in full female dress, I believe, right? I don't know what you're speaking on, Jim, I believe. So we talked about that last week.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, listen, like if you wanted to take something on the surface and be like, one time I found Tansy in drag, like one, I'm not a drag queen. One, I'm not a transvestite. But at
I
the same
think that we're
time,
not
I like to
taking it-
party, baby, and
We're
I
not taking it
get
on
weird.
theory though, baby, because then later Kurt's ex-wife, because his marriage dissolved, as far as I have learned, and I could be wrong
Talk
because
to
of
me.
this.
Talk to me.
Did Kurt's marriage not dissolve because of this
Relationship
relationship
like a theory. You have
or
any proof?
presumed relationship? Well, I thought that mom and or daughter at some point have spoken out about it specifically, like ex-wife and or estranged daughter.
If I ask somebody, is this police officer that has this show, this incredibly looking guy, is he gay? And they say, yeah, he's gay. And then I talk to 15 people around town who say, well, we don't know if he's gay, but the guy he's hanging around with is being caught in drag. None of the people that I was talking to knew who I was talking to, and they all had the same story. We're talking about school teachers, real estate agents, family members. So even though it might be horrible to think this for some people, this kid spent a lot of time with people that told me that this guy came from a family of child molesters. Fact. A man who hasn't been with a woman in years. Fact.
Wait. Who is a family of child molesters? Chase,
Kurt
right?
Wadsworth.
Kurt. Okay, no, we're on to Kurt. I'm sorry.
So we've never got off of him.
All right, sorry.
So what I'm doing is I says, okay, I can't prove whether or not Dylan at this point is gay or not. I can probably tell by a guy who's 60 with a track record. Was he married? Did he have a boyfriend before? Let me give you an example. I got a call from Kurt Wadsworth's daughter-in-law. His niece. I got a call from Kurt Wadsworth's niece. She went on a radio show with me. And she says, I hate that man more than anything. She had no idea I talked to Chase. She had no idea about Dylan, nothing. I says, why do you hate him so much? Why do you hate your uncle so much? She says, because he molested, groomed, and dealt with my brother in a sexual way for years dressed as a woman.
I can see how that pisses you off.
Okay, let me
Hold on, guys, let me finish before you start. Let me get this out. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're telling me that your uncle dresses in drag. By the way, third person to tell me that. Third person that doesn't know the other two. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, we're here. It's just
That's fine.
No, look at that.
What we do
Yeah,
is
no, it's fine. The camera got too hot.
What I do with Kurt Wadsworth is what I did with Kurt Wadsworth is I start talking to these people. And I says, well, why do you hate your uncle so much? She says, my brother killed himself in prison. He hung himself 2 years ago. And the note that he left behind talked about the abuse, the sexual molestation of my brother at the hands of my uncle for years. The same thing he did to Dylan Rounds. I says, he did that to Dylan? She goes, I don't know. He's missing. He was with him, spending the night at his house. And so I looked into this guy's death in prison. Bingo. She was telling me the truth.
I got you.
So let me say this real quick before I forget. There was quite a few chats coming up, Jim, as we were talking about this, that just say, even if he's gay, how is that relevant? It's not relevant whether or not he was hetero or homosexual, in my opinion. I think what matters is in cases when you're looking at a missing persons or you're looking at a known murder, you're looking whatever the crime is, right? The first person we look at is a significant other, a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. So it's very important to know who it was he was dealing with on a day-to-day, right? Because that's kind of the first person you're going to talk to, whether or not they're incriminated on this. So it doesn't matter necessarily that he was homosexual. It's good to know that because you need to know who he was with. Same if you were, heterosexual, right? Like whoever he's hanging out with, his boyfriend, girlfriend, that's going to be the first person you're going to want to talk to. So I just want to make that clarification. I don't care. I don't care if the kid was gay or straight. The point is, we need to talk to whoever
What if he was gay for straight? Is then the old drinking bros gay for George Strait? Sorry about that. All right.
We're saying, her and I are kind of saying the same thing, but I've got to disagree with her. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, well, Gabby Petito went missing, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, who's the first person y'all looked at?
Brian.
And did anybody say, well, you sure she's straight? You sure she's straight? It seems like we only question somebody's sexuality if we say they're gay.
Well, they're saying, why does it matter? And my point is, I don't care.
No, I think what you're saying is it doesn't matter, but the way it matters in a case is that if he was gay, you do need to talk to the first person he was in a relationship with because they hold the key to a lot of answers.
Sure.
If you're a gay dude with a boyfriend, the boyfriend knows everything.
forget the whole boyfriend angle. Let me tell you why else it matters. Because if this kid had an open relationship with a 60-year-old man, tells me he's into older men. If he had a relationship with a 60-year-old man and the parents and the grandparents never mentioned this to me to start the case, it tells me they didn't know what the hell this kid was into. Did he also run meth? Maybe he was a pimp. Maybe he's into other stuff. What else is this kid into that you're not aware of? So it has a lot more to do than just who he was dating. It has to do with the fact that the parents, number one, didn't even know the grandparents were buying him a farm. We're going to start seeing a pattern here. Number two, didn't know his sexuality. At least they claim they didn't. Because I want to know, I want to understand the mindset. Because you guys seem like you'd be pretty good parents to me. I'm not a parent. But I'd like to understand the mindset of parents that would allow, even for as long as they could possibly hold it off, a 17-year-old kid to go live down in that area. And I think based on the religion, I think based on the interviews in that town, let me ask you this. Can anybody in the chat room, anybody on this program prove he was straight? I'll wait. Prove to me he had a girlfriend.
I'm more concerned, real quick, I'm just more concerned about potentially the predatory behavior of Kurt at the age that he's at, correct? Like with the child, or I know he's an adult at 19 of that age. That concerns me more. It's a bigger red flag to me than it is gay, straight. I really don't give a damn. But like at the end of the day, that's my concern. Someone who also comes from a family of the Wadsworth brothers. We know the three of them, right? We talked about it last week, guys. We had that grid up. They all three have rap sheets a mile long. They've all been involved in all kinds of gross stuff. Not a great bloodline, right? So gay, straight, I really don't give a damn. Again, that's not what we're talking about. The chats keep blowing up on that. We're not like shaming the kid for being gay. I don't care. But it means that we can look forward to, we can move on and see who he was with, who he had a relationship with. And then even more so, I think even more shockingly so, we can be a little concerned about the fact that this age difference does scream some red flags, if not predatory behavior at least, right?
Yep, 100%. Now, I think that some of the things that are substantiated here, you just covered them all. It is odd that he lives out in the desert by himself. It is odd that he's maybe potentially has a relationship with a 60-year-old man. And it's also odd that a lot of these guys are predators by nature. Let's talk about the Wadsworth brothers really fast. What conversations did you have with them?
I had one conversation with Kurt Wadsworth. And I had been told by other people that had dealings with him that told me about his sexuality, his history, and his family, what he was like. So I wanted to vet that. A woman named Ellen Berg, who owned the property of the bar that he leases, told me that this guy, she used the word crescendo. I said, what does that mean? She goes, up and then down. He'll be here for a long time and then he'll explode. So armed with everything that I heard in town about this guy, everything that I had heard with Dylan, I still wanted to hear it from one of the two people that might have been involved in the relationship. And because I had to cross things off the list. If you don't let me cross things off the list, I'm going to continue to work on that. I want one guy. And by the way, my job was to do exactly this. I didn't realize it was going to be an issue until I opened my mouth publicly. So what I did was I talked to Kurt Wadsworth, and I played with him a little bit on the phone. It was interesting. And I says, hey, we talked about a whole bunch of different stuff and little things, what the kid liked, farming, how long he had been out there, his background. Told me he was married and divorced, just a little chit chat. So I wanted to see if I could make him pop. And I figured that I could make him pop by messing with him three different ways. If you throw a rock, and this is the best advice a private investigator or detective ever gave me, and it is so true, it's unbelievable. It exists in your chat room, it exists with you two, and it exists with the people on the street. If you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, and the one that hollers the loudest got hit, what does that mean? That means there's a bunch of predators, a bunch of people that possibly could have done something to Dylan Rounds. But if I throw a rock into that pack of dogs, the one that starts yelping, the one that's the loudest, probably has the most to do with it. Kurt Wadsworth proved that to me on the phone because I asked him about two women that called me, two hookers. They were self-proclaimed lot lizards.
Okay. So they're self-proclaimed. They told you they're lot lizards.
Yeah, because I didn't know what that meant until I talked to them. I said, lot lizards. I thought they worked at a juice bar. So what happened was I got a call. Don't forget, my phone number is put up out there. And I got a phone call from two women on one phone number that told me that they were hookers in that area, that they had come by on trucks. It's a big trucking route in some of that areas, and that they had met this young man. They wanted the reward. They wanted the reward. So they called me. My phone number was out there. They weren't calling the cops.
That they had met Dylan?
Excuse me, ma'am?
They said they met Dylan?
I'm going to get to that. So they called me and I says, what can I do for you? And they said, we met him at a gas station, truck stop, whatever. He was eating there, wherever this place was. We met him and we want you to know how that went. We think that the guy that was with him might have something to do with it. I says, who was the guy? I said, Kurt Wadsworth. And I says, how do you know Kurt Wadsworth if you only come into town periodically? They go, he won't touch women. But he had a real cute kid with him. This kid was real good looking. Dylan Round's a good looking kid. 19 years old. He's young.
But they didn't say Dylan Rounds. They just said he had a cute kid with him.
No, they said his name. They said that's
they knew his name.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They knew his
Okay.
They knew Kurt. They knew him. So they said, basically, they said, we tried to get him to buy us. We tried to get a date with him. And all he wanted to show me on his phone was tractors. And I knew that they were telling the truth.
No, listen. I know that you know that they're telling the truth. I listen, that doesn't substantiate anything.
You haven't let me finish.
Okay.
I knew they were telling the truth because they told me the photos that was in that kid's pictures in his cell phone was the exact same pictures the mom said was in the cell phone. So when I brought this up to Kurt and I said, Kurt, so now I'm on the phone with Kurt and I want to make him pop. I couldn't make him pop about his business. I couldn't make him pop about his family. So I got one more shot to throw that rock into a pack of dogs, and it was after his sexuality and after Dylan Rounds. I said, Dylan, Dylan, I got a call from two women at a truck stop, said they knew you. And Kurt says, you did? Who? I says, they told me they were lot lizards. He laughed. He goes, oh, yeah, I probably know who those two are. So now I'm kind of shrinking the gap. I said, they kind of had an interest in him. I says, they said that they wanted him and that they offered him a date and he turned it down. All he wanted to show him was pictures of tractors in his phone. Was Dylan gay, Kurt? He popped, he screamed, and he yelled. And what he told me was, Dylan doesn't need women in his life. They cost you nothing but money. And I says, what about you, Kurt? Now we're in a fight. I says, what? And you know what he sounded like? A jealous ex-bitch. He sounded like a jealous girlfriend when we were on the phone. I said, Kurt, what do you mean? What's wrong with these two girls? Why didn't you buy them the hookers? And I'm joking with him. I'm poking that bear. He says, we don't need women. We don't need women taking our money. Now, listen, I know a bunch of 60-year-old guys, probably knew him since I was 19, right? Never had them say our money. He was talking like they were a couple. Now I'm getting this. He's screaming, and I'm writing this down. I'm like, this guy's showing his ass. So he continues to go into these two hookers. He goes, yeah, I was there. Now we know that they both exist. They were telling me the truth. They didn't know where he was, but now I know the story's truth. He goes, yeah, I ran them off. I called them back and says, how did that end? She goes, oh, that guy that we think he was with ran us off. It all added up. So I called the grandparents. I says, we got to get the parents on the phone. We got a problem. And the problem here is that you don't realize that your grandson in that desert had a sexual and physical and emotional relationship with Kurt Wadsworth. They never argued it. They never said it was untrue, and they never asked me to prove it. And they said, we better get the parents on the phone. And that was my first introduction to Candace Cooley.
Okay. And that's your first introduction. Now, listen, there's a question in the chat. You said I could ask you anything I wanted.
Sure.
Are you gay?
No.
Okay. Somebody in the chat said,
can you prove that, though?
I don't know.
Can you prove it?
No.
Maybe I am.
I don't actually.
Maybe you are. Who knows?
Let me put it to you this way. If I was gay, I wouldn't be a 60-year-old man unless he had a shitload of money. Like,
right?
You're gay, you know.
I'm getting there, so I can get that.
Right? Yeah, but you're pushing 60, Andrea. Would you have a question?
I have 0 questions right now.
You have 0 questions?
I have a lot of questions.
So now you run into Cooley. Now, listen, when does the phone call, like, you had a phone call. The way this goes is you had a phone call. Now you found all this information. We've got a missing child. Now, I want to try to bring this back to the child, and I knew this was going to go down this kind of a rabbit hole where we're going to miss the fact about it. So let's move past the thing. Your theory is, and listen, the evidence that you have and the conversations you have, I can only empathize with you as I would empathize with anybody on their side of the story. Is I would say that if I heard this story, and you know it's true because you heard it. Now, I didn't hear this story, so it is speculation. This is in court. This is a podcast. So if I'm in your shoes and I hear this scenario of these two lot lizards, as you call them, hookers, whatever it is, and he's showing them the pictures of his tractor. Now, I think that's endearing and sweet. I would not want to partake in any of that kind of hookerness. I've also been duped to sharing a lot of information with a hooker in Vegas, where somebody was like, "Yo, homie, that's a hooker," and I was like, "Oh shit, I thought she was generally
hookerness."
Yeah, hookerness. It's a real word. Look it up. It's Wikipedia. Now, I thought she was just generally interested in the bullshit that I had to say. Gonna find out she was a hooker. Of course, I didn't go home with her or anything. So I get these things. Now you get in front of Candace Cooley. Here's my question here first. What was your conversation with Cooley, and did you have any empathy or whatever, or did you talk to her the way you talked on a podcast?
I've never spoken to Candace Cooley on a podcast. What podcast?
No. I'm saying like when you talk to me on a podcast, you're very candid, you're very frank. If I was a police officer, I would not be talking the way I talk on a podcast to a victim.
Or how was my first conversation with Candace Cooley? How'd that go?
Yes.
I didn't, believe it or not, for a guy who's got a lot to say like me, I didn't say shit. I let her talk. You want to know what she said?
What'd she say?
You want to let me? And I'm going to tell you what she told me. And I know 30 seconds into this, you guys are going to be, whoa.
No. Go ahead. I'll let you go. I like to preempt.
She said she absolutely hated Justin Rounds. And she said, on my way into town, I broke out into hives, knowing that I had to deal with this man face to face again. She didn't break into, and I thought that was beyond bizarre. She didn't break into hives because her fucking kid was missing in the desert. She broke into hives because she was going to have to deal with her ex-husband, who, by the way, and you could look up his paperwork, was arrested for, and I didn't know this at the time, had been arrested almost 12 years previously for trying to run her over with a car. We'll get to that. So I says, why? She went into stories about being strangled, about him beating the shit out of her son, how she was always the mother, how she was a great mom. Nothing about Dylan, about what an incredible mother she was, how she was always been there for all three of her kids. Now, at the time, I didn't know she lost custody and hadn't raised the children. I didn't know this. And I'm listening to the grandparents in the other ear at this point, still saying, take everything she says with a grain of salt. And she's burying the fucking cops. I'm going to tear this police department apart. And she said that on interviews, by the way, right around the same time I was dealing with her. I'm going to get all their badges. And I says, ma'am, what do you do for a living? What do you do? I had to get off the Dylan Rounds conversation and just calm this woman down. By the way, not crying. Not how do we find my son. Nothing that Gloria Alvarado's mom, Anthony Smith's mom, or a gamut of other people I've worked with has got. Can you imagine the hysterics?
I'll give you that one.
I will say this. Listen, if one of my kids went missing, one of my four, and look, I got one to spare. But even having one to spare, because I only wanted 3 kids, now I have 4. If one of my kids went missing, I would be I'd be ending bloodlines. So I'd be very busy, but last thing I'd be doing is talking to the media. And I don't think my wife would be able to talk to the media, but at the same time, I will say that I've met a lot of people. Everybody's going to act different.
Oh, I agree. Until I looked up the person's background to find out why they were acting that way, because I've never seen it. And yeah, listen, there's excuses and caveats. People grieve in different ways. Let me tell you why I think I was getting that precursor to why she wanted to make it sound like she was Mother of the Year. She owes millions of dollars in liens to ex-boyfriends and fiancés around the country. Look it up. It's out there. Fact.
Now, how do you look up?
Punch her name into a search engine, look up her attorney. Her attorney served me. It's funny how everybody looked at the cease and desist order for the private investigator, but they didn't look at the lawyer that was associated with Candace Cooley for all of her legal proceedings, in which she has millions of dollars in liens. Now, to me, that was pretty interesting, because if it was gambling debts on the dad's side, all these podcasters and people would be like, we got to look into the father. He owns gambling debts. But when the mother's 4'11", she's a grieving mother that owes money that has nothing to do with the case. When it's the father, when it's the man, well, it probably has something to do with it. Let
me ask you this.
Sure.
As my wife, I'm thinking about my wife right now. I'm thinking about me missing a child.
What's up, Ashley?
What would make you think? Now think about this. What would make you think that a mother would be so callous as to not care?
I didn't say she didn't care.
I know, but we're speculating that she's not crying. We're doing a lot of insinuating here, and I would like to know, and I'd like to know you, because I'm asking as a cop. I can't picture. This isn't the Casey Anthony case. The mother didn't do this. The mother is not a suspect here. Why would you insinuate, or why do you think it should be insinuated, that a mother would be so callous and unempathetic to this situation? Or is it that maybe you guys just got off on the wrong foot
We didn't
and
get
you
off on the wrong foot.
and
We
you
never got off on the
prejudged
wrong
her
foot.
based on the grandmother's warning?
Her and I never had an argument until the last call that she released to a relative of hers in Indiana, Pennsylvania. She had a relative of hers that runs a Facebook now, and that woman is on a major channel and released a private phone conversation. Up until that point, my friends, Candace and I had no issues. We didn't fight. I tried not to deal with her. I tried not to talk with her. I didn't say that she didn't care. I just said she didn't show any emotion. And I'll put this back on you, officer. Show me one video of her crying. Show me one video of her, doing
It happened,
anything.
but it was about 3 weeks in. But you're right.
Yeah.
I understand, like, we can't say, like, as a nurse, I've seen people grieve in all kinds of different ways, right? People do things very, very differently. I can understand that. Me personally, to look at her, I wonder why she wouldn't be crying or talking, but I can't judge her on that either. I don't know. Like,
But we did talk about this. We did talk about this weeks ago before we
did.
ever heard of this guy.
We did. So I'm saying, yes, I'm not blaming Jim. I'm saying that I'm seeing both sides, right? Like, I can say that as a mom, I can't imagine what I would do. Don't think I would be talking to media at every turn. Probably wouldn't be able to brush my teeth or my hair if I could get out of the bed in the morning, right? Also, I can't say that she's implicit in some way because she's not crying. I don't know. Everybody does things differently. But I do want to start, like, getting us back around. Like, I appreciate the insight you've shown for what we've been talking about so far. But there are so many cast of characters, so many rabbit holes we can go on. We would be on the show until midnight. Granted, we don't have a timeline, right? But I do want to kind of cover the case. I want to talk a little bit about the truck, a little bit about the boots, a little bit about the position of the seat in the truck. So we can kind of talk about the case and start to eventually wrap it up a little bit. Hey, girls in the chat, I'm hearing you. Like, hey, ladies. That's all. Don't worry about it. You weren't reading it. But also, hey, Mike the Cop and BC and Ski, because we saw you guys in there too. So, hey, guys. Good evening. But so let's move forward. I don't even know at this point. Like, I don't know.
All right.
So
you want to know about where the boots. Tell us about these boots. Tell us about this truck. Tell us what we
get back
kind
to
of
the crime scene. Just
get
kind
to
of
this crime
in
scene.
a broad stroke, look at what we're dealing with here.
Solve this. Give us what you know on this
I
case.
started giving the mother things that I had found out that I had shared with the grandparents. Now, at this point, she doesn't know I've been on the case this many days. She thinks I'm brand new. And she starts ordering me around. I need you to run this plate. I need you to look at these shoes. I need you to, by the way, if we send you these shoes, can you run these at your crime lab? She must have thought I was fucking Bruce Wayne. Yeah, hold on, Candace. Let me get to the crime lab. It's over here near the fucking tractor. No, I don't have a crime lab. She had no idea what she was talking about, and she was put in charge, which is exactly what the grandparents told me she was going to do, which they wanted me to speak with her and talk with her and explain with her things, but they didn't want her controlling the narrative. She didn't pay me. She's not my client. She might be the mother. And listen, guys, in this business, I've dealt with a hell of a lot of mothers that weren't grieving. Just because you're a mom doesn't mean you're grieving. You got one of them in your chat room right now, and she posted a thing. Not every mother of a missing kid grieves. That's possible too.
Right, hell hath.
Yeah, especially
woman
shit
scorned.
like custody. So it's very possible. I know it's tragic to think that a mother might not give a shit, but sometimes it happens, and people do different things out of being desperate. So basically, I would go back to her and I would talk to her about certain things, and she's okay. Well, don't worry about that. We found a watermelon in the desert. What can you tell us about this? Well, it's green on the outside, red on the inside. Probably tastes really good. What the fuck do you want to know? I mean, I'm not taking. I would go back to the grandparents and like, do you want me to run these 2 license plates or look for these missing people? And they're like, Jim, no, she's playing you. She's getting you off the. Don't listen to her. What else can you tell us? So I found out that there was nail marks. Human nail marks on Kurt Wadsworth brother's arm, Troy Wadsworth. Everybody in town now was calling me about this. And so I went to Candace and I says, Candace, we need to look at this guy's nail marks. I says, I just need you to do 2 things for me. I'll look into all the license plates. I'll contact all the people you want, and I'll go down any rabbit hole you want. I'll even refund your money 100%, and I'll leave the case. I need you to do me 2 things. Take a picture of Troy Wadsworth's nail-marked ridden arm and see if he'll let you do that. Send it to me or send it to the police. And number 2, ask Kurt Wadsworth to see his cell phone. Be interesting. He doesn't have to. I told the cops this too. Well, he doesn't have to show us his cell phone, but it'd be interesting. You want to see my cell phone right now? I'll give it to you. Be real interesting to see him decline that. Be interesting to see if he deleted stuff off the phone. Show the parents, show them your cell phone. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because I think they were afraid what they would have found on Kurt Wadsworth's cell phone. They had him in their custody, right in their camp for days. They wouldn't take a picture of his arm, and they wouldn't look at it, even for a refund and to get rid of me. So then what they ended up doing was they ended up not talking to me, the entire group, for 3 days. In the course of those 3 days, I get a very unique phone call from a woman named Clune. Her son went missing, named Aiden Clune. He went missing about 30 miles away, almost looks like Dylan
In
Brown.
April, about a month before Dylan.
Yeah, he went missing weeks before Dylan did. So I get a call from the woman. She goes, I want to hire you. And I says, your son's missing out there? She goes, didn't Candace Cooley tell you who I was? And I says, no. She hires me to look for her son. I looked into her son for 3 whole days with this. And I had never done 2 cases at the same time before, but because they were in the same area and I couldn't cross out if they had any connections, I didn't know. And I says, here's what we can do. We can get double the press if 2 kids that look similar are in the area, and we'll be able to go to the press, and here we come. By the way, I've been able to get a shitload of press without even being on the case. Could you imagine if I was? And guess who that offended? The person that thought they were in charge of the ship. 3 days goes by. I don't hear from them. I said, we got to all get on the phone, guys. I go and I do a channel called Zav Girl, in which I depict some of the stuff that I thought was going on in this case. And a phone call was released between me and the family, which was the culmination of about a week and a half's worth of frustration with these people, that they wouldn't look at the nail marks of the things, and that's what happened. So that's the call that was released on Sleuth Mom's channel, who turns out to be the woman that I mentioned earlier. And by the way, for all these attorneys, there's no such law as doxing. There might be a YouTube law, but now that this woman is involved into, at least peripherally, in this investigation, it's not doxing. It's telling what's part of this, because the released phone call is a major part of my interviews and who I am on these channels. And I promised I would do it, and here it is.
I mean, maybe I missed. Listen, like I'm not.
I want to say that we're not allowing anything real quick, guys. Like we know what we're doing.
Yeah,
Like,
I
we
haven't
weren't,
heard. But what did you dox? Did you dox something that I missed? Because I'm just trying to listen to the story.
It depends on who you ask.
Well, hang on real
What was
fast, Jim,
doxed?
because I just want to address the comments real quick. If you're reading the comments, guys. Hey guys, we're
Just a podcast.
just a podcast. But also
And-
we're not dumb. We know
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Right.
We talked to Jim beforehand. Y'all, before we do the show, we do a lot of research. We know the controversy. We know the good stuff. We know the good, the bad, and the ugly. We understand. Just know that we know. Like we're adults here.
Doxing is not using somebody's full
I'm not
name
talking
over
about
and
doxing.
over
I'm talking
again.
about
I'm
where
talking to
people are
somebody
saying
in the
that
chat. Like,
we're allowing a
relax.
certain thing to kind of happen. It's like, guys, no, we'll address all this later. Like, we're here to tell a story. We're here to say, all right, Jim, like, say what you gotta
YouTube-
say.
hang on. Let me go to Milwaukee Larry. Hello, sir. First up, he has been threatening to dox a YouTuber's I guess
Name and
YT's
address
YouTube.
for days.
Did you say somebody's name and address? Don't say the name or the address, because I don't want to hear it again. I missed it.
They're saying essentially that we're being naive because we're allowing something to happen, and so just
just
know that we.
I didn't hear anything, so
I
I'm
didn't
just gonna
sneak
let it keep
anything
going.
in there. I didn't sneak nothing, Milwaukee Larry. By the way, the Brewers are terrible this year. The Packers are going to
saying
be worse.
Ringo says
Hey,
be
listen,
careful,
don't
name
be
and
talking
address.
shit about the
Yeah,
Brewers.
Milwaukee,
We love the
Larry.
craft brewers. I'm a huge craft brewers fan. Relax. Lumber Chef says there are some dum-dums here. Cancel culture is strong. Thank you, Lumber
What's up,
Chef.
Lumber Chef?
What's up, brother? We love you. Okay. Listen, I want to bring this back because I've said from the beginning, man, you came on my show. You came on our show. I shouldn't say my show. It's our show now. It used to be my show. Now I've got an awesome partner here. It used to be Mike the Cop show, really. Now it's still his show, but he just lets us do it for him on Tuesday nights.
Just on Tuesday.
Because he loves us. Let's bring this back, because do you think, and I'm catching this from the chat. So all you chat people out there that are against this guy, let me be on your team for a moment here.
Sure.
Do you think that Dylan Rounds is still alive?
No.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop you there. I don't want to hear anything.
Percentage.
I know I don't want to hear any more else.
99, I'd say 99% that kid's dead. Do I think he died that day? I don't know. He might have lived somewhere for a week or two. I don't know. But I would say at this point, he's not. But the possibilities that he may be alive out there bring into conspiracy theories all the other things that surround this case, which is why this thing has become so polarizing and interesting with a young man that went missing. This kind of a case, and I would like to ask your co-host there, is usually a hell of a lot more interesting if it's a cute blonde, isn't it?
No, because
No?
No, the
When
last
last
case.
time
None of the cases we've done have been
see where you're
blondes.
going with that, but we had a great case about a really tall redhead,
That's true.
Catherine.
The Catherine from Australia.
She made a pelt out of her husband.
She did.
I get what you're saying with that.
You know where
But
I'm
also, I know where you're going with that. But it's also not necessarily true, right? Like, I mean, I think that there's just so much happening here.
There's a lot to unfold, man. There's a lot to unfold. So let me just keep going. So I want to keep pressing this forward. I don't want to be here all night, but I want you also to two things. One with the doxing thing. My wife sent me a beautiful text message here. My wife's the smartest human being I know. She said that you dropped a name and a street, but not an address. Like I'm not worried about that because I mean, shit, my name and address has been dropped on here a fucking 1,000 times. But let's be respectful and let's not lose our minds here in the chats or with us as hosts and you. Milwaukee Later, maybe I've gotten played. I don't know, dude. Like, I mean, this is how you learn things, brother. You bring somebody on the show and you learn from them, man. I'm investing 40 hours, but here we go.
I'm
let's
sorry,
go
Turf.
with this.
I'm not woke. Turf doesn't know me. Turf just said I'm woke and boring. And I'm sorry that you think I'm boring. Grab a cup of coffee or you don't have to.
If he only knew your experience in life as being probably one of the baddest girls I've ever met. There's a reason why this young lady is surrounded by green berets at all times.
Okay, enough with that's. We're done with that.
Because she married a bunch of them. I'm kidding.
Jesus. Okay, moving right along, Jim.
Listen.
As though it couldn't
Listen,
get worse,
let's go. I want to know, man, your intent on this. How can you be empathetic, man? Listen, I've worked 1,000 dead. Listen, I've seen 1,000 dead people. I'm not bragging about that. I think if I had to count in my brain, there's got to be upwards of 500 dead people that I've been around, worked for. It sucks. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I can be, I can be callous about some of them, but the majority of them, I generally feel bad. I feel bad for the family. I do see you handle this missing case not how I would handle it as a professional. I think that I would have been tiptoeing and stepping around those things. Now, you're different than me because you're an inner city guy, I guess. I think that's what rubs people the wrong way. Do you genuinely care about finding Dylan Rounds, or is it just another job to you?
I'll be interesting. What wants, and my heart breaks for the grandparents. My heart breaks for the aunt and the father. The only one I'm callous to is the mother. That's it. Everybody else in this, I feel terrible for. My heart breaks for those people.
If you were still on the case, what steps would you be taking right now to find Dylan Rounds?
None. The FBI's involved. The FBI.
You have to back out. Do you have to back out when the FBI
I'm
gets
not
involved?
a licensed PI that was there. Would I still gather information? Yeah. I would still have my phone number up to vet phone calls. But the FBI was not involved in this. Whatever they found made this thing a crime. It wasn't a crime in the beginning. That's how we opened the show. Whatever they found, which I'm hearing is a cell phone, whatever they found on that trail on that day when the police went and looked, let me explain something to you. This is a nasty situation. It's a nasty situation. If I was just called and said, hey, listen, moron, we think you're terrible. We made a mistake. We're not going to take you up on the refund of the money by giving you the pictures of the scratched arm or the thing. We're not going to take you up on that. Go away. We don't want to talk with you anymore about this. We made a mistake in hiring you, and that's fine. That wasn't what was done. What was done is my private phone call about 3 women that were held captive, molested, and raped was released on a podcast for hits by the mother. Then a cease and desist order was given to news stations in the area by the mother.
Okay, I don't care about all this stuff. What I care about
Well, I
is
care about it because that's why I had
if
to
you
go
were
out here and
still,
defend myself. So,
yeah, but I wanted you to come on here because I want to learn more about this Dylan Rounds case
well, ask me a
from a
question.
PI that was on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm asking is as a PI, had you not had this thing with the mother? My question is going to be, and I want you to wait to answer because I got to address something else really quickly, and we're gonna get through this. I promise, guys. One, what would you be doing as the PI? What direction would you take right now if you didn't have any of the controversy? If you weren't in the social webs,
Yeah.
what direction, what path? I'll think about it because I got to address something else really quick. What path would you be taking to solve this case? Craig Dulesky dropped us $20. He says
Thanks,
the newbies are
Craigers.
Trolls in the chat are straight 10 ply super soft. Craig's my manager, so I have to put him in the chat at all times if he says he wants to be in there. Now, Mr. Milwaukee Larry, I'm not against you, sir. And my radar is my radar. We've never had to do this before. We've never had somebody like this reach out to us. We're typically in this for funds. But I think as a police officer, I'm going to interview somebody as something that we could try to learn something from. And I think it's better if Larry, if you consider this man to be your enemy, sir, it's better to know your enemy and to know all the things about him. Now, listen, I've seen a lot of podcasts that have been very salacious where they get to the heart and they disagree with somebody and they delete them immediately and nobody else gets to hear the rest of the podcast. I've always been against that. I've always said, man, let that guy finish because I wanted to see what his intent was, or I wanted to see I am just the facilitator of seeing what this guy's intent is. You can choose to listen. You can choose not to. Nothing we have said is this man. I have not deemed anything that he has said true. I have not seen that it has been false. Simply hearing his side of the story, which I think is important to know because he's a very close person to the case and he reached out to me. So if we'll be patient enough to get through the rest, another 10, 20 minutes of this,
and let me say this one last point on to what you're saying is DJ Davies made a great comment a second ago because it is hard, guys.
DJ's the shit. He's always been with us. I know you're new, but DJ's always been.
I've chatted.
Okay.
We're cool like that now. But listen, he made a good point that just said, hey, ignore the comments. You're right. It's tough because there's a lot right now and they're flinging. They're everywhere. Ignore the comments.
It's like a hippo, when they fling their shit everywhere. That's what's
like
going on right now. There's just a hippo flinging shit everywhere.
Anyway, good point, DJ. Like we're on it.
We're on it, DJ. Okay, where would you go if you were still on the case? If you didn't have to deal with Candace, where would you be leading this case? Now, I've heard the militia theory. I've heard the meth kind of theory of the meth labs. I heard that from. By the way, that was a great. If you guys want to hear some really great shows, it was Perplex QT. I had a great time on her show. I had a lot of fun. Her and I jived a lot. We bounced some things off together. She has a great theory about there being meth labs. So I've heard some of these theories. Tell us, guide us where you would be going right now as a PI on this scene. Where would you be going?
If they drop me in there right now, I would just be an avenue to receive phone calls. You said something earlier, to solve the case. I was not hired to solve the case.
I'm sorry. To find the body.
That's a big difference. I mean,
I know, but let's define the body. What would you do?
My oil light's on. Will you change my oil? Doesn't mean you're going to do the brake job. So what I was hired to do was to feed the family information that they weren't able to get from the police and that people would not call the police for. So I would have my phone number as a vessel for anybody that wanted to call me. I would be handling media to some degree if there was people that wanted to be on the show. And that's what I would be doing at this point. I would leave the police work to the police, to the detectives, to the FBI. Those are the people. By the way, the family just put out a press release in the last couple of days and said they don't even want people looking for this kid in the desert anymore. So I would have probably already done as much as I could have done for them and then be there for the family to do any sort of other stuff. I don't get involved in the YouTube or the Facebook pages. They hired like a little publicity group, which is who we mentioned earlier today. It's not doxing if they're part of the case and if they're related. So that's a thin line. But that's what I would be doing right now. I would not be out there trying to solve Dylan Rounds' disappearance because that's not what this plumber was hired to do.
Okay. So
you understand?
No, because I feel like if I am hiring you, if I'm paying you $5,000, I do want the information.
it was
I think
5,000.
the information, or 4,000, whatever it
Yeah.
was. I would have paid you fucking $10,000. I don't even have it. I would have borrowed it from Andrea. I would want you to bring me
OnlyFans.
I would want you to bring me to a
his
body,
body.
to
Yeah.
a human being. Were you transparent in that when they said, did you give them the same speech you just gave here? I'm not against you, again, just asking.
I didn't need to give a speech. They told me what they wanted.
And all they said very specifically that they did not want you to bring his body back. They wanted you to bring information
Well, I mean,
that they
who
weren't privy
wouldn't
to.
take it? But guys,
Sure.
they knew I wasn't a licensed PI in Utah. They knew I wasn't a licensed PI there. They knew I wasn't coming into town. They wanted information fed to them. And if it would help find him, then yes, definitely. But my job was never to bring him home. My initial job was just to talk to Chase Venstra. It's very difficult for people to understand because they watch television. And if you had a show about a private investigator and the only thing in the show was him going around saying, okay, where to eat dinner? Okay, where do you go to school? That wouldn't make a very good show. You got to kick indoors. You got to dog the bounty hunter it, or it's not very interesting. Unfortunately, guys, 90% of this job is not all that glamorous until you get on a show like this. Well, then you could write your own ticket. So my job was not to do that. If the family would have said, hey, we needed you out, we need a private investigator out here to look for him. Guys, they had helicopter pilots, drones, cadaver dogs, bloodhounds, hundreds of search and rescue people, the FBI, the law enforcement, and I'm not a search and rescue guy. And they still haven't found his body. So I don't think I'd be able to do better than them.
Where do you think the body would be?
If I had to guess, I think he's stuck in a hole down there based on what I saw and heard.
The caves.
I'm sorry?
Like is it old mine shafts?
Yeah, mine shaft. There's hundreds of them out there. They're hard to find, and when you do, they're hard to find out. Well, let me put it this way. You got a mine shaft that's 1,500 feet deep. How are you going to find out if his body's in there? You going to crawl down there?
No,
you
and
send-
listen,
you
we
send
did
stuff down.
have a body that this happened. This was a case in North Carolina that I was privy to, where there was so much rebar and so much stuff that we couldn't get in there. But because of the suspect's statements, they went ahead and said, listen, that body is more probably than not down there. There's just no way to get to it. I do understand that. This case going forward, Jim, probably my last question. This case going forward, I know we don't know. We can only speculate. This can only be a speculation. What the FBI is doing, do you feel like, or do you think that the FBI or the law enforcement officers that are investigating this case will solve this case? Do you think we'll get a confession from somebody at some point?
I think if they don't find the body, the only way they do solve it is with a confession. And I think that's why you haven't heard stuff from the 2 people or 3 people that were being looked at and arrested for other things. Does that make sense?
Of course. And on a separate note, I will say when we've talked about money being a potential motive, right, for this crime with Dylan. We know that he had the money that was the loan taken out from his grandfather on him, the money that he had, 30 or 40K. Presumably, I looked up banks. There are banks, even though this is a pretty desolate area, there are banks around there. So he's a young kid, probably did have a bank, probably didn't have it on the mattress. We don't know. But with money looking at a motive, my point is with the reward being $100,000, I think any of us would like to think that any one of these cast of characters, if they knew something, would speak up for 100K, right? And I just think that they all know a little bit too much about each other.
I think there's people that aren't in jail that know more too. I still believe that. And
Of
what
course.
I would like to do, so we're not long-winded and people don't think I ran with my tail between the legs, and we kind of talked about this, is there's something in radio they call graffiti. Graffiti is when you rapidly answer questions from people that want to ask. So it'd be like, instead of me going into a story about it, Jim Terry, are you a convicted felon in Florida? No. Are you a licensed PI with a PI license in Mississippi? Yes. I would like to at least humor these morons that are in here that are trashing me with the answers to those questions, so they don't think I come in here self-promote and then
Guys, we love you. You're not morons.
Yeah, I'm not calling anybody a moron. Sky Muller, I appreciate your comment here that we have happily traded our reputation for view. Listen, if we don't know a guy, if we don't know what's don't accuse us of doing something. We've been very fair. If you've never listened to any of the episodes, we don't trade anything. We don't
See
do
how they
anything.
attack?
It's okay. It's
all
fine.
right.
I mean, people are emotional. We get it. But I mean, we don't give a shit for
They're
views or
triggered.
anything like that. We make all of our income on podcasting. And I think we've done a very good job over the last year with a very major podcast network to deliver very unbiased or very objective the news. And actually the Tuesday night is this whole premise of our show, Miss Mueller, is just to keep law enforcement officers awake at night. The majority of our listeners are law enforcement officers. So this is why we're called the night shift. It's so that when they're on a Sunday night and there isn't any crime going on, they can put something on their radio other than, mainstream radio or mainstream news. And they can just kind of to not feel so much pressure or stress. It can be entertained if they choose to do so. So again, we're not really looking for views, and we're not taking the sides of this guy or anybody else. To be frank with you, this is a very different episode for us that, Mr. Terry asked to come on our show. That's a first for us, Miss Mueller. And so we allow that to happen. But Jim, I do respect and I appreciate the work that you put into this, the time that you have given us. I appreciate, not saying I agree with, but I appreciate your take on a lot of these things and the theories that go into this. I know as a law enforcement officer, I think there's a lot of things that you and I do agree on. And I think it's just sometimes people, it can't be worded that. And I'm not taking their side or your side. I'm just saying, I do think some of the things that we brought up at the beginning of this podcast are very odd. I said that from the beginning before I knew you. Andrea, give us your final thoughts. What do you think happens here? Do you think we solve this case? I don't think, me personally, that the meth heads outsmart the FBI.
I think it'll be solved.
I think it's so too.
I think I would be very surprised if it's not solved. And if
I wouldn't be surprised if it's solved already and they're just looking for plea deals.
If there's like a mybookie.com on this one, there could be actually.
I would not bet against my bookie.
I think it would be. We're already, what are we into? July 11th,
50
whatever.
days.
So
50 some odd days.
Yeah. So we're a solid, like 7 weeks. I don't think it'll be that long.
What about you, Jim? Over under on when this thing gets solved, if it does at all. Over under. You're a bet man. You got to be.
Well, and I've said this on other channels. This country goes into a freeze when football season starts. Football season starts 3 weeks from this Thursday with the opening game in Canton, which is Jackson.
Listen, I don't fucking watch football at all. I'm a rugby guy. I do not freeze. I fucking hate football. I think it's I'm a rugby player, so I feel like.
Well, now that you say that, I am starting to question your sexuality. So no girls in high school and you like rugby. Maybe you're telling us something here.
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know. I don't kink shame. I'll do whatever. For $20.
You asked me a good question. I think if it's not solved by, let's say, the first week of August, you're in for a long haul. It'll either be solved in the next couple of weeks or it's going to be a long time.
Man, you think football's that big of a fucking deal?
JC Allen said mybookie.com says there's a negative 850 that I lost a lot of popcorn in this ghost bed.
Ow, ghost bed.
What's up, ghost bed?
What's up, ghost bed? You think
this country goes into a freeze during football season. Kids are going back to school. Most high school programs have already started. College football starts. Saturday and Sundays are dedicated to television in this country during the fall. You've got kids going back to school. You've got media outlets getting ready to cover other things. The elections are very close, guys. They are right around the corner. Gas prices in real life, people having to take their toddlers to school in Little League. Yeah, Dylan Rounds is going to be a distant memory, especially if I kill it. And let me tell you how I kill it.
Unfortunately, you're right. I believe you there. I do agree with that. I think that is a sad truth.
They better find it quick. They either better find it quick or they're in for a long haul with that body. And by the way, guys, with all due respect, he's one kid. There's a hell of a lot of people that need help out there. There's a hell of a lot of children that have been abducted and other cases. The police are spread thin as they are. If there's one thing I want to get across on this program, and I have never wanted to be a cop. I'm not one of these Paul Blart mall cop guys. I could give a shit. What they do is so much different than what I do. It's apples and grapefruits. It's the difference between football and rugby. It's not the same sport. So what I'm telling you is this. The cops are the best in the world at what they do. The detectives are the best in the world at what they do. But if you think you need somebody to garnish more attention, if it's not a crime, if you've got nowhere else to turn or nowhere else to go, and you think that there's a private investigator out there that can help you, then look into them. People know exactly what they get when they hire me. Sometimes what they don't realize is what they're going to be told. And what this family was told shook them to the core when it was out there publicly. And I think it has more than anybody. And the best part about this on a closing statement is now I can sit back and watch. And the great thing about private investigating and missing persons is it's a pass-fail business. So this kid eventually, I hope you're right, will be found. And it'll be interesting to see who gets arrested, who goes down with the ship, and what comes out of this, and who profits after this kid goes missing, because it's a very unique case.
Jay and Fred, thank you so much. People contact Jim to be on shows, not the other way around. If you only knew how lazy I was, listen, you're just wrong, Jan. Fundamentally wrong, factually wrong. I was sleeping in my bed, and this gentleman called me, cussed me out on the phone, called me every name in the book. I stayed on the phone, and then he explained to me why he swore at me, and literally, I think you'll appreciate this if you will, because it's true. But he called me and said, "You motherfucker, you said this shit, blah, 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 blah." But all I heard was motherfucker because I was asleep. So listen, I don't reach out. We don't have guests on this show. I'm sorry, Miss Jan Fritz. I apologize. We do not normally have guests on this. He did call us. We were, I did not know that today's show was going to be like this. There's a lot of you that are upset that we brought him on. Listen, guys, if you go back and listen to our other episodes, it's fine. We're reasonable human beings. We give anybody a reason. And if you are attached to this case and you called us and you had something to bring to the table, go for it. I don't know who Sleuth Mom is. The only person in this chat I know for a fact is Imperial Girl and Matt McGahee. He says, keep your show going. I'm all in. Chin up, guys. I love the content. Imperial Girl, who's been with us from the beginning, she says, guns up, giddy up, Wolfpack. We've got Craigers in the chat. We've got Davey in the chat. We've got DJ. We've got everybody's in the chats, and we've had a great time. So listen, guys, Sandy, I've already asked Jim about his sexuality. He claims
Turf
he's not
is not
gay.
your fan. I'm just throwing that out there. He doesn't like either one.
One of the questions, guys.
Turf, I'm so glad you listen.
One of the questions that keeps coming up is about a television show or a YouTube show called Adventures with a Purpose, which is people that go into these. And you and I talked about this off the air. And there's a lot of people that are asking. By the way, Candace Howard, the only scam is you look nothing like that photo. Tell me how to do that.
All right. Rein it in, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm not going to do all that.
As much of a cartoon. But by the way, they say that I owe $20,000 based on, and this question has come up a million times, $20,000 based on a reward. That reward was pulled down probably a year before they ever noticed the case. And Adventures with a Purpose would not even have dealt with Jed Hall's case if I had.
Listen, bro. Yeah, don't know. I'm going to cut you off there because I don't know any of this stuff. I haven't done any research on it, so I can't call you out on it. I appreciate you coming on the show tonight, man. I hope at the end of the day that this gentleman is found. I wish the best for Dylan Rounds. Me personally, I think this Kurt Wadsworth guy is a creeper. I want more investigations done on him. If I was a cop, I'd be all in on this Kurt Wadsworth guy. We also this Troy Wadsworth guy, the whole Wadsworth family.
And Scott, but we didn't even touch on Jim, which we can't do right now. But James Brenner, the quote squatter, unsquatter, has now been named a suspect as of 4 days ago. So there's a lot.
And listen, that could be it. But I think at the end of the day, these are a lot of bad people that were involved. And I think that me personally speculating here, I think at the end of the day, Dylan Rounds was probably a good boy. He was probably a good person. I have looked at his social media. That doesn't say much, but somebody had mentioned in the church, do I have a scumbag radar? I have a scumbag radar. I don't get scumbag from Dylan Rounds. Now I do get scumbag from mom. I get a little bit of scumbag from dad. I get a little bit of scumbag. Hey. Listen, that's just relax. Listen. Only that, I think that I think there's a lot of selfish weirdos in this case. I could be wrong. I think it's a lot like the Tiger King case, to be frank with you. It's a lot like the Tiger King case where we just got a bunch of bad people doing a lot of bad things that are kind of selfish people. But at the end of the day, Dylan Rounds is a victim. At the end of the day, Candace Cooley is a mother who has lost her son, and that is a tragic, terrible thing. At the end of the day, Justin Rounds has lost his son. I cannot fathom. I cannot imagine what that would be like. I don't want to imagine what that. I hope at the end of the day that we find Dylan Rounds. I hope to God that he's alive. And I hope that we do get to do a follow-up on this 6 months from now. We have a lot of great information that has good news. I'll tell you right now.
I hope it's less than that.
If it's bad news, we're not going to do a sensational show because I don't want to profit off of this kid. I don't want all this BS on that. We like to keep it fun and flirty. I will come out with maybe a brief news in another show that's not about Dylan Rounds and say they found him, and unfortunately, or celebratory, we found this kid, and I'll try to get him on the show. But no, our intent here was not to give anybody negative a platform. There's always going to be people who disagree with somebody and don't. The only way I can figure that out is if I put them on the show. And listen, guys, when somebody reaches out to you on a Sunday and you have a Tuesday and you've got 5 shows a week, we're not getting all the time. We don't give a lot of time to research this because, again, this is not the premise of this show. This show is usually you telling me a fun story and I go, what?
Yeah. And so,
oh my gosh.
I will say on that note, like moving forward for next week, we potentially have something a little different, guys. Like it's probably going to be like a 3-parter.
Oh,
it's
shoot.
a big one. So
a 3-parter.
Buckle up, guys. Yeah.
On a true crime story, it's 3 parts. Like 3
it's a whole
weeks in a
different
row?
thing. It's not
That's a lot.
Not as incredibly current.
I'm
but
not even into it. 3 weeks
guys,
in a row.
I'm heading out of here. Thank you. God
Thank
bless
you.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to Monkey Mar next. I got to get in the car and drive to Monkey, MONKIEMAR. I'll be on that channel. We'll take your calls. Call me up if you got the guts. I'm there. God bless.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Now you can have your shot at him.
Mar.
Say it again because that's important.
I'm going to Monkey Mar, so all you haters follow me over there. They take live calls. Monkey Mar, MONKIE Mar. Then after that, I'm going to No Thanks Investigates, and that's a wild free-for-all. Guys, thank you for putting up with me. I really appreciate it.
All right. No, we
Your good
appreciate
support.
you. Have a good night. Cheers.
God bless.
Bye.
Guys, thank you again. There's a lot of new people in the chat today that don't quite understand what the show. That was a much different chat than we've ever had. We hope that you guys join us another time and see what the show's kind of really about.
And learn us a little bit better. I feel like there's a lot of folks in the chat that
are really mad.
Don't
prejudge us.
And that's all right, but like maybe
we're good human beings,
minute.
actually.
Give us a minute, guys.
Yeah, we're actually pretty good people. Lazaro Lopez always in the chat. Gosh, dude, you've got nothing better to do. You've been in this shit for 2 hours.
The next crime we should investigate is where the bottom half of Lazaro Lopez's shirt went.
I want to do a giveaway for a Lazaro Lopez shirt. Maybe we'll do that this week on the old Instagrams. Follow us over at Instagram, Failure to Stop. We'll might do a Lazaro Lopez shirt giveaway. Maybe I'll get Lazaro Lopez to sign a t-shirt and we'll mail it out, and I'll pay for him to mail it out because we don't want to put me in charge of mailing shit out because I suck at it. Until next, guys, this is Night Shift.
This is Night Shift.
Andrea up late.
Guns up.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.
I'm Ron Burgundy.